Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind. And now, the Freedom Reporters.
We've got live team coverage tonight of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Democratic 2024 presidential candidate, giving a major foreign policy speech tonight. We thought this was worthy of coverage because he's going to be outlining his foreign policy on Russia, Ukraine, China, and the rest of the world too. So, and you know, this is kind of a special occasion also because, you know, last week on the show, we talked about the 60th anniversary of President Kennedy's peace speech, the speech he gave at American University in June of 1963. And from what I'm told, Bobby's speech tonight is inspired by President Kennedy's speech. So I have high hopes for peace tonight.
Excellent. Well, they've been censoring the heck out of him. They have been
and
trying
us
to suppress him, and us,
just for
yes.
talking about him.
And actually, that being said, we should encourage people to go and subscribe over on our Rumble channels.
Yes, please.
Please do that. And I have to say that if the speech kind of gets into delicate territory, we may have to dump out of YouTube, and then we would be only over on Rumble. So if we just happen to pop off the air, or if they just cut our stream,
kill the stream, yeah,
then you'll have to go over to Rumble. Yeah, I haven't had too much trouble on Facebook, but YouTube's been a real problem.
You know, that's amazing to me because you know, Facebook, of course, has been very censorious these past few years, especially on anything related to COVID or vaccines or. And Kennedy too. I hear that some of Kennedy's supporters are also being shadow banned, throttled, censored on Facebook. And of course, Instagram censored the Kennedy campaign. We were able to turn that around. And I think that's got a lot to do with the litigation that Bobby currently has going against Facebook, Instagram, Meta, Google, YouTube. He's suing them all for censorship, for censoring him and others. That may have something to do with why they're censoring him harder, but I tend to think that these orders are probably coming directly from the Biden White House. You know, we see President Biden is literally trying to lock up his Republican competitor, Donald Trump. So would it surprise you to find someday, if we ever get those YouTube files, like the Twitter files, to find out that perhaps he's trying to censor Robert F. Kennedy Jr. too, to get rid of the competition because Kennedy's his closest competitor?
Yes.
Wouldn't surprise me a bit, would it you?
Nope, not at all.
Nope.
I think that a lot of this censorship is being directed by government. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we know that they were censoring people on Twitter, I think it's pretty safe to assume that they were censoring people on other platforms too. We just don't have the files yet to prove it. You know, Elon had to go buy Twitter so we could find out what actually happened. The government's not going to declassify those files probably for 50 years.
Yes. So tonight's speech is very exciting. It's I think an important speech because it deals directly with what I think is the number one issue of this election campaign, or at least it should be if it isn't top of mind for most people, and that's the war in Ukraine.
Yes, absolutely.
And the reason I think it's that important is because we're seeing escalating concerns about the possible use of tactical nuclear weapons.
I mean, we are literally careening towards a nuclear war. And it seems like most of the presidential candidates in this race, outside of Bobby Kennedy and Donald Trump, will not acknowledge that.
Yes.
You know, they pretend it isn't happening, but it is. And
it is indeed.
Kennedy's very concerned about it. And tonight, you know, well, all throughout his presidential campaign so far, what's he been in the race now? About 3 months? I think about 3 months.
Yeah.
You know, he's been a very outspoken critic of our proxy war in Ukraine. He's careful not to take a side, which is wise. If he's going to be the next president of the United States, he has to show some fairness to both sides. So he's trying not to take sides, but he has demonstrated a very clear grasp of the situation and why Vladimir Putin had to invade Ukraine to protect the people of the Donbass who were begging for help, literally begging for years for the Russian government to help them. So I think Bobby understands all of that. I think he understands Putin's reasons. I think he understands the Ukrainians' point of view as well. So this speech tonight is supposed to put his position in a much larger context in terms of global peace in the world, and how we can avoid another world war before this thing escalates any further than it already has. And from his press release, it says he will define a new conception of American leadership in the coming multipolar era, which is also kind of remarkable that he's acknowledging a multipolar world order is inevitable. It's the future.
That is important because all these other candidates, they're resisting that. That's the policy, is to resist that because they want U.S. dominance internationally.
That's right. I mean, I certainly haven't heard Donald Trump acknowledge that the future is a multipolar world order. I don't think he's willing to accept that. Joe Biden's made it clear he's not.
The question is, will the American people accept that? There is, there's been a long-standing, I would call it almost tradition among American voters that, it's got to be USA number one for a lot of people. And they sort of demand that of their presidential candidates. They want a strong leader, a leader that at least makes Americans feel like they're taking a leadership position to, in their minds, keep the peace, but also to, be the dominant economic force in the world, spreading democracy far and wide. Or am I off base?
No, I think that's exactly. I mean, American exceptionalism, it's a thing. We've been doing this at least for the past century or more. It's always been our way to, and certainly since the end of the Second World War, we just kind of made ourselves the self-appointed guardians of democracy.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that America is exceptional in many ways. A lot of countries are exceptional in their own way. I think America has a lot of things to be very, very proud of, just as Canada does, just as a lot of countries do. But, America in particular, they have so much is being achieved. It is a great country, maybe the greatest country ever created.
Yeah, we Americans tend to think so.
Yeah, it's a fantastic country, but the reality is there are a lot of other countries, and
we need to respect them.
That's right. That's exactly.
I think
right.
that's the biggest complaint that the rest of the world has had about us, certainly for the last 20 years since the war on terror began, is the United States is just flexing its muscle and, saying it's our way or the highway. We're not really respecting the sovereign territory and the sovereign rights of other countries who have the right to determine what form of government they want, who they want to lead them. We seem to be hell-bent on regime change,
Which keeps bringing us back to that catchphrase they continue to use: rules-based international order for all of the Western NATO countries. But of course, at the very top of that food chain is the United States. So it's that's exactly what it is. It's their way, the U.S. way or the highway, the Western way or the highway, which is to say that this collective or this group of nations, these allies, they make the rules internationally, and any country that doesn't adhere to those rules under this new rules-based international order, they're considered to be outliers. But that's why we're seeing this sharp division between the NATO countries and now the BRICS countries.
That's right. That's right. And you know, I hate to say it, but we asked for this. I mean, we literally pushed Russia and China together because of the way we've been behaving. We've created a super alliance that could potentially turn into an enemy alliance because it seems that we're trying to make enemies out of them. That's a disastrous foreign policy objective. And you saw Antony Blinken over there this week in China being all nicey nice to Xi Jinping to his face. That's our duplicity. You know, he shakes hands and he's nice to the diplomat's face. But as soon as he gets home, the old rhetoric, that aggressive rhetoric, ramps right back up and the foreign policy does not change.
It is a scary thing because when that is going on, it's difficult to know. Like, I'm sure that Xi Jinping just doesn't trust him. Or
could
Biden,
you blame him?
Of course, no, not at all.
Yeah.
And if there's no trust, then everything that was said means nothing. So what was really achieved by even going? But, you know,
it was a very expensive photo op, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
He flew all the way over there just to take a picture of them shaking hands, but it's meaningless.
The telltale sign. Well, we'll find out more when we see what happens with the the military exercises and the confrontations that have been going on in the Taiwan Strait, the South China Sea. If all those confrontations continue, then we'll know that it didn't mean a darn thing. And we're still on the same almost war footing with China because of the Taiwan question.
Well, you notice that Antony Blinken made them no promises about that this week while he was there. No promises on that.
Yeah, he did say. I was surprised to hear him reference, no changes to the foreign policy. The one China policy remains intact and so on. But
well, that's our official position and has been for a long time.
It's always been sort of murky, and yet we did see Nancy Pelosi fly into Taiwan, and that was an absolute deliberate provocation to get China upset.
And that's the way the Chinese looked at it, as a deliberate provocation.
Yes, and it doesn't matter if Pelosi or Biden said that no, that wasn't the intent. It doesn't matter what the intent might or might not have been. What matters is how the Chinese government interpreted that.
Right. All that matters is how they look at it.
Right.
And they see it as very provocative, just as Vladimir Putin saw the expansion of NATO to the east as extremely provocative.
That is right.
And any talk of bringing Ukraine into NATO, that's like waving a red flag in front of a bull and expecting the bull's not going to charge. It's, that bull's going to charge.
Yeah. So sitting in the back room, we have our man on the scene, Don DeBar. Hello, Don. Hello, sir.
Hi, you guys. How you doing?
Hey, good to see you, Don.
Good to see you too, Laura. Good to see you, Rick. What's going on?
Well, folks, Lori, why don't you introduce the newest member of our team here?
I want to introduce you to our new Freedom Reporter. Folks, meet our friend Don DeBar. He is a reporter for Pacifica Radio and Press TV and several other news outlets as well. Don, who else do you contribute to?
Sometimes RT, once in a while Telesur and CGTN and First Channel in Russia, 24, some others.
Don is a very experienced journalist, been doing this for, I don't know if you want me to tell him how many years you've been doing this.
As I say, experienced means old. Yes, I'm very experienced.
That's right. Well, you can't beat the experience of us three old people who've been doing journalism all of our lives.
That's right. That's right.
So Don is a big supporter of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and, of course, was planning to attend the speech today in New Hampshire. And we're like, hey, Don, you've got a great camera. Talk to us.
Yeah.
We want you on the ground. So he's going to be talking to people, bringing us some interviews, just kind of giving us a feel for what's going on there at the venue. And it looks crowded. Is it sold out?
It's I don't know if there's ticketing or not. The place is packed. It's certainly at capacity. There's a line as far as you can see outside, and the people. There's a lot of Kennedy 24 shirts, T-shirts, and things on people. Like a lot of the merc is getting out there apparently already. I haven't seen one single sign. I've seen more signs that say what is it? What is that thing that they say about Biden when they don't call him Biden? He thought he heard them saying it at a football game.
Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
I saw "Let's go, Brandon" signs. Between here and Massachusetts, I haven't seen a single Biden sign. But this place is Kennedy City. It's phenomenal, actually, and it's a year and a half outside of the election. So.
And didn't you say you got caught in a big traffic jam and people just trying to get to this thing tonight with Kennedy?
Yeah,
great.
So it's going to be. There's a lot of excitement around it, and there's a lot of people. I was hoping I was going to be able to grab people and interview them. It's just too busy. I can see a little. The people are confident that are running the campaign, but I can see that they are drowning in their own success to a degree, and so it's a little hairy. We'll be bringing you stuff, but I just don't know how much and when. And I'm going to shoot where I'm not connected to the internet, and I'll try to get stuff to you guys too from that. Otherwise, for the next program, there'll be a ton of material, and then we're going to do this again Thursday.
That's right. Okay. We'll be covering another speech on Thursday from Kennedy.
So, Don, can you tell people exactly where you're at? What's the venue? What city you're in? Because a lot of people maybe aren't aware of where this is happening tonight.
This is near Manchester, New Hampshire. What's it, Goffstown, and St. Anselm College. We're in the I forget what hall it is, but the subject matter is Bobby Kennedy Jr. doing his speech on peace and diplomacy. Although it's 10 days past the actual anniversary, on June 10th, 1963, his uncle JFK gave a speech at American University that, in essence, a lot of people say it's the speech that got him killed, actually. He was calling for an end to the Cold War, for peace, and you see the sun coming out and it's turning me into this.
That's okay.
And he called for joining with the Soviets to go to the moon, to knock out the military competition and essentially walking the path to nuclear destruction, to try to find a way to accommodate each other. So this is the external mic.
There you go. Just bring that a little closer. We got a lot of background noise.
Yeah, there is a lot of background noise. That's the problem.
Better. Perfect.
That's much better. Cool. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
So, all right, good. I wish I could do something about the lighting, but where I'm sitting, the sun just came out. And
man, that's blinding you. That's right in your eyes.
Let me try.
Need some shades, brother. Need some cool shades for our friend Don down there.
Yeah, it's fine, Don. You just as long as you keep the shadow off your face, it looks okay. The exposure compensates. So it's not that bad.
I had a black bar before.
Yeah.
Anyway, this I'm in the media section. That's the noise you're hearing here. That's how many people. Inside it's.
Yeah, we're having trouble with the audio again. Can you get that microphone?
I'm sorry.
Closer?
Yeah, it moved. Sorry.
Yeah, just hold it close to your mouth.
This is the media section. And so the noise that you're hearing here, there's a lot of it is media, and then inside there's a lot of people. I mean, right here immediately.
Look at that. That looks like pandemonium in there.
Yeah. So
that's good. I like a little pandemonium.
I think it's great.
I like to see it.
Excitement in a campaign June the year before is pretty remarkable. I had sent out to some folks 3 or 4 days ago. It was one of those Facebook anniversary postings that they sent. On that date, like 3 days ago in 2015, the Republicans had 10 people that were in the primaries, and they listed their percentage of support. Trump was 11th with 1%, and that was this time before the 2016 election.
Oh, right.
So where Bobby Kennedy is right now, So that's some context for that.
That's right. That's right, Don. I mean, depending on which poll you look at, Kennedy seems to be polling consistently between 15 and 20% across the board.
Yep. And
I
that
find
is,
that pretty remarkable, don't you?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
He's on the one hand, he's a Kennedy, but on the other hand, he hasn't been in politics. He
Ever.
doesn't have that machine. Yeah, exactly. And the entire Democratic Party machinery is arrayed against it. They're not going to
They
help
are.
at all. So, the people matter, though. That's the thing. And Trump showed that. No matter what you think of him, he had a lot of support that didn't really care what they said about him on television or in the newspapers. And that same system is arrayed against Bobby Kennedy, and we're seeing already that people don't care. They know him better than the media says, I think, anyway.
And I bet you'd probably agree with me on this, Don, that Donald Trump was, I think his success, a lot of that had to do with social media. He ran his campaign on Twitter, and he had the RSBN network, making sure that there was always a live stream of every rally that he did, because he knew the mainstream media would ignore it, wouldn't cover it, and certainly wouldn't broadcast the entire speech. So I think it's important that Kennedy also has a very strong social media game.
Yep.
And that's how he's doing it. He's tweeting like crazy. He's putting out his policy initiatives on Twitter.
There was another anniversary that passed within a couple of days, and it made me look up the original material. It was an anniversary of something that happened with Howard Dean's campaign long before the so-called scream heard around the world, and it made me look up what happened. He had just won, I think, the Iowa caucuses, something unexpected in the early part of the primary season, and suddenly he was either the front runner or a very serious contender. And his campaign was a novelty at the time, relying on social media for fundraising and for organizing, to get the word out. And when I was looking at the material around, at this anniversary, whatever the hell it was, in the campaign, I also just pondered how social media's role each time has changed from election cycle to election cycle as social media matures, as people use, their use of it matures. Also, they build networks, they have a better understanding of how these things work, and also watching, as bad as the polling numbers were, say, in 2004, when Dean ran, for how people thought about the media and some of the institutions around that. Now, it's a record. They say that out of 100 people, 20 people will take anything that the authority says, 20 will never take anything that the authority says, and the 60% in the middle will swing back and forth. All of the institutions, but particularly the media, are polling at only 20%, like they've lost everybody but the most gullible. Right. And so I think this format, and just social media generally, is going to be where this campaign is fought and won.
I totally agree. And that's why we're doing this, right? That's exactly right. Why you're in New Hampshire today.
That's right.
Why we're broadcasting this live. It's so important that we have live streams of every important speech that he makes. And that's how we get his message out to the voters. And I know that the media is going to ignore him. They already are. And when they do occasionally give him a little coverage, they just want to make him look like a nut.
Yeah, right.
Like that ABC News piece. They finally had him on ABC. He's been blacklisted for so long, and they finally had him on, but all they wanted to talk about was the vaccines, and then that turned into a debate, and you can tell that they chopped that thing up on the editing room floor. It was heavily edited, and then they put that crazy disclaimer at the end, basically trying to dismiss everything that he just said.
Yeah, they're inventing all kinds of crazy stuff with media these days.
So dishonest.
Rachel Maddow the other day, that whole little speech that she gave about, you have the first guy who was ever president that's ever been indicted afterwards. Not even Nixon had that honor, okay? And he resigned in disgrace. They've been after him for all this time. They indict him, and he's going to have a press conference, and he happens to be leading the president of the United States in the polls, by the way. And yet that's not newsworthy because someone like Rachel Maddow has decided he's going to lie. And we have a responsibility not to lie. And in fact, we're culpable to make sure. And then she's been lying.
She
since she got
said
on the
that. I
air.
saw that.
I know. It's like, what, are you kidding me? But everybody sees this stuff. It's like they don't realize they live in a world with other people.
Has she retracted her Russiagate lies yet?
No,
Still
she
waiting.
She still peddles it.
And that video of her telling us that the vaccine stops the virus in its
Yeah,
tracks,
I love that.
that's still up too.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of that stuff. So I mean, that's what a campaign like Bobby Kennedy's, like really everyone that is not going to be placed in office by whoever it is that's actually placing people in office. I have my own theories, but whatever it actually is, Biden obviously didn't get there on his own merits. And you could tell by the way they're trying to avoid the New Hampshire primary. As a matter of fact, Biden can't campaign the way a normal politician would. He can't come glad-handed. He can't put himself in front of people without them realizing he's severely impaired, and he's basically a meat puppet. I mean, I hate to use the term, but it's really appropriate. And that's what we have right now in the White House in the middle of a war with Russia. That's a pretty frightening thought.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, Joe Biden literally, I don't think is physically up to the task of coming to New Hampshire. And when you campaign in New Hampshire, you really have to campaign in New Hampshire. You have to work those voters. You've got to go to the diners. You've got to give a lot of speeches. You've got to go to the Waffle House or whatever the equivalent of Waffle House is there.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think he's up to the task.
They don't think he's up to the task. That's why they're trying to move it to South Carolina, where you can basically do it from a basement studio.
Yep. You know what it reminds me of? You're old enough to remember the 1980 campaign, right? When Senator Ted Kennedy challenged Jimmy Carter. And in that year, Jimmy Carter basically ran his whole campaign from the White House. He did not hit the campaign trail. His excuse was, of course, he wasn't in poor health. He just was busy trying to handle the Iranian hostage crisis.
He handled that well, didn't he?
Well, we all know how that turned out.
Yes, that's right. So, look, even if the way that presidential elections are conducted insulates the president to a degree, I might say to a large degree, from real, accountability to the people, from like the sense that each individual has that they put the president in the White House. I would say probably for most of it, if there's 330 million people in the country, it's less than 1 over 330 million. And so with all of that, when we see it managed obviously like this, you're teaching like a political lesson to the people that in fact it's not a democracy. In fact, what you want and what you care about really doesn't matter to whoever's in the White House. Yeah, okay. And then from there, you can draw your own conclusions about everybody from Congress all the way down to your local dog catcher. And I think what they're doing as they do this is they're undermining what's left of credibility in the public institutions. And I think that's pretty dangerous.
Well, there isn't much credibility left. As you just mentioned, when you see the approval ratings of what the American people think of mainstream media, it's between 10 and 20%. It's in the toilet, and their ratings are in the toilet. And yet, independent media like us, we continue to grow. And that's why Bobby is pretty much running his campaign on podcasts, on social media. And I mean, Don, look at he did the Joe Rogan experience last Friday. And that just, wow, it's reached millions of people, far more people than would ever have seen him on ABC, CNN, even Fox News. I mean,
look at the chain of events around Bobby's interview with Tucker Carlson. Okay, Tucker Carlson is the biggest draw on cable news, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, all of it. And he has Bobby Kennedy come in. They start telling some truths that you're not allowed to tell, basically, on television, including the fact that this very network is financed by the people that were lying to you about all these things, relating to your health. So Fox does and shows just like MSNBC did with, what's his name, Phil Donahue, back at the time of the Iraq War back in 2003.
I
That
remember.
I'm going to tell the truth, and everything you've heard about the media is really in it for the money, and so you got to bear with them because they have. It's actually not about the money. Donahue was their biggest draw. Tucker Carlson was the biggest draw in news on television, and they fired him in a heartbeat because he started telling the truth about what this thing is and how it operates in the society.
Just like MSNBC fired Phil Donahue and Jesse Ventura.
That's right. They did. They did, didn't they? Yep.
And then they bought their contracts to shut them up.
Shut them up. Like they're trying to do.
Make sure they couldn't go somewhere else. And we see Fox doing that to Tucker now. They're trying to sue him for doing his Twitter broadcast.
That's right. Yep.
It's amazing.
And meanwhile, to make your point, so they fire Tucker Carlson. He does a program on Twitter, which is not a broadcast medium until he starts doing it. And not only does he equal what he was doing, he beats the aggregate of all of the news networks that day with a multiple factor. It's like there's 100 million hits now or something over that.
Oh my God! I mean, that's just there's no way that television can compete with that. They just can't.
They're digging their own grave. You have a situation like you said with Congress where it's 10 to 20%, sometimes 8% favorable.
Right.
And you have a 90 to 95% reelection rate. The people see that too.
Okay, how does that happen?
Exactly. The question can't be, we made a mistake on election day again. Okay, it's obvious that something else was afoot other than the Democratic control, the Democratic control of the Congress. There you go.
I'll never understand why the people of Nancy Pelosi's district keep voting her back in. She is the least popular politician in America. She's far less popular than the president, far less popular than Kamala Harris.
Yeah,
I mean, everybody hates Nancy Pelosi, so who the heck keeps electing this woman?
Including Biden and Kamala Harris. Only her taxidermist knows for sure.
So, Lori, you might want to say hello to some of the new viewers. I did finally get your Rumble channel connected over there, your other Rumble channel.
Oh, great.
So that's online now. The other YouTube channel, not up, but we're still on the main YouTube channel here. So, hello, people. If you're just tuning in on the other channel where the stream likely just went live.
Well, I bring a different crowd of my own to Maverick News. I keep bad company, as you know, so I've probably got, Russians watching and people in China might be watching, and who knows who might be watching. But
I'm going to China next week.
You are?
Next
week, right?
Yep. Yeah, I'll be there for most of July. Actually.
Tell us about that. That's really exciting.
It's a tour of the old Silk Road, and
wow,
gonna learn some stuff, and then come back and report on it. I'm gonna try to send material from there. I'm not sure about the internet connection, particularly. The entry points is like up in the northwest, so it may not be possible. I'm out of there mid-July and going to Europe, and I'm certain that I can send things by then. So maybe by the 15th or so, I'll be in a position to start sending.
And you're traveling with former Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney, right?
Yeah, and some other folks, and
amazing.
We're going to see what happens. It should be an very interesting trip.
And Don, it's still really loud in there. Can you pull your microphone just a little bit closer?
That's about as close as it gets.
That's perfect.
Perfect.
Got it.
Hello, testing 1 2.
So what is the mood like there? You're in the media room, but is there a large crowd in the hall, or what's happening?
Yeah, this is the lobby to a theater, and but they hustled everybody into the theater, and so the media were congregated here last. So that's why it was like that, and now it's pretty thin. The mood is very exuberant. People are smiling and laughing and excited and talking about what it means. And for a lot of people, I heard several. They don't get to hear this much because it's not in the town square really. That people are excited about the possibility of peace and of like a change in the direction of the country. I mean, I've heard that articulated a few times just standing online. You've got I have a friend who goes out with a sign every Saturday to a town square somewhere in the Hudson Valley, north of New York City. So Westchester County, Rockland County, Putnam County, Dutchess County, Orange County. And the sign basically says something like, about stopping the war in Ukraine. And he gets some support, and a lot of people ignore political stuff when they're out and about on a weekend. But there's been a lot of hostility too. There are people that are clearly watching Rachel Maddow and or Gutfield and or whoever else it is that's exciting this craziness in people. And I'm not seeing any of that here. It's amazing to me that you could squeeze 1,000 or better people into a building and not have a bunch of crazed fascistic, who's going to use the A word, but fools. So it's very encouraging to see it.
So what kind of demographic do you think that Kennedy is attracting to his campaign based on the crowd you're seeing? I mean, to me, he's a sort of a populist candidate. So what does the mix of people look like to you?
Across the board. It's got a bias in favor of geography. I'm going to bet most of the people are from the area from, say, Boston, up to like New Hampshire and Massachusetts and Maine suburbs or Rainbow around Boston. But all ages, obviously all ethnic and economic classes. I mean, there are people older than me here. They do exist. And also there's college students here and a few kids even younger than that. A lot of people in their, middle age, late 30s to early 50s or whatever. You can see that here. It's a pretty broad slice, actually.
Yeah. So he has momentum.
It's early, obviously, but he's not starting from dead. Again, if he's polling 20 to 30% in polls that are obviously rigged, where Trump wasn't polling 1%, and Trump got elected. So he's in the game for sure. No matter what they do, he's in the game. And as we saw with Trump, the more they try to rig it, you get boosted. People know the game is fixed because that's the game they're in too, and it's fixed against them. And so when they see, they try to freeze Bobby Kennedy out, I think that's gonna put some wind to his sails even further.
And so when you're making reference to that, I guess a large part of what you're talking about is the way the DNC system is set up. He's up against a lot just to get the nomination.
It's hard for me to take the temperature of that. We know what happened in 2016. We know how it was clear that Sanders won California, for example, by exit poll. I don't know. People know a lot of this stuff. Back then, anyway, I don't know if it's true anymore. The State Department, U.S. State Department, in its assessment of whether or not some other country's election was cooked or was legitimate, they would look at a vector between the actual declared official vote and whatever the exit poll would show. And if that vector was more than 15%, the presumption was the election was cooked. In the 2016 primaries, and it's ironic that Quinton came from being Secretary of State, by the way, you had in California it was 30%. You had like a half dozen states where it was over 25%. And so, that's those same people are taking polls now, and he's neck and neck with Biden. I don't believe that, honestly. I think he's 3 or 4 times Biden. If you ask around, I don't know anyone that enthusiastically says, "I hope we get 4 more years of Joe Biden," except maybe his wife, hoping he'll be working. I don't know.
So he's going to be talking about his foreign policy.
Yeah, peace and diplomacy.
Not a single one. Nobody I know is enthusiastic.
What just happened?
I don't know. Something weird with the internet there. I think.
Yeah. I think
Are
I
they
lost
messing
her,
with our
lost Laura's
stream,
mic.
Rick?
I don't know. I think her mic kind of cut or
Yeah,
something.
something strange is going on.
That is strange.
I'm gonna have to put my glasses on for a minute. And after he makes the speech, there's going to be discussion at 3 different locations. The Danis Center, which is where we are. There'll be Charles Feinstein, who's a senior advisor to RFK, Peace Consciousness and Foreign Policy. Then Strategies for Peace with Kristen Christman, an international policy advisor for RFK. That's in the Danis Center conference room. And then Building Peaceful Communities with Dennis Kucinich at the Student Center at Malucha. That's going to be later. I'm going to try to catch what I can out of that stuff and see what I can send back.
So how long do you think the speech will run? Maybe an hour? Any idea?
That'd be great.
His speech in Boston, I think ran like an hour and 10 minutes or something. So, maybe on that order. I don't remember how long JFK's speech was on at American University, but I mean he's evoked that or invoked that.
It's about 30 minutes.
Historical reference. So maybe it's going to be more on that order. Although, as bad as things were then, and you're talking 7 months after or 8 months after the Cuban Missile Crisis, so-called, they're a lot worse now.
Cuban Missile Crisis.
We were afraid of a shooting war with the Russians then. We've started one since then. So I think maybe he might have to say more. It might take longer. I don't know. We'll see.
So, Don, do you think the campaign is organized enough? Do they have their act together? When you're talking about the DNC, and the Biden campaign, he's got that whole machine behind him. If you're talking about Trump, he's got it down to he's got a well-oiled machine as well. They've got a social media strategy. They're using data to target specific demographics with their marketing. It seems to me that Kennedy is kind of starting from scratch because he's kind of new, right? He's a new candidate where these guys already have established teams and systems in place. Is he getting his act together? Is the team on the right track?
I think so. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. The polling numbers are above and beyond a whole bunch of professional politicians, Governor Rick DeSantis, Governor or whatever the hell, Senator Ted Cruz, et cetera, et cetera. Like just walking in and saying, oh, by the way, these problems exist that nobody's talking about. And some of these really need to be solved now, and nobody's talking about it. If they are talking about it, they're talking about how to make it worse, in essence. Let's send even more money to Ukraine. Let's send our own Air Force over there and declare a no-fly zone. Let's really provoke the Russians to back them into a corner. He's thinking back to his uncle and his father when they were in a situation that we were hoping wouldn't get to where we are now. Say, for things like, let's remember the lesson we learned not to push the other nuclear power into a corner where they have to decide to either fight a nuclear war or take an unacceptable, humiliating defeat. And so the U.S. response to being confronted with that is to declare their policy is to try to inflict the humiliating, unacceptable defeat. From the State Department saying they want to decolonize Russia, meaning the Russian Federation is a Russian empire, in modern days. It's really an agglomeration of conquered countries that we need to liberate and break up back into those countries. The Russian nuclear doctrine says when the survival of our state is threatened, and when you use nuclear weapons on us is when we can use nuclear weapons. So the policy of the United States is, well, let's do that. A lot of people are afraid that have sense. So when Bobby Kennedy says, let's not walk down that road, let's find another path. I don't understand how anyone cannot see that is complete sanity. While they try to paint him as a lunatic, you have the real lunatics trying to start a nuclear war.
How much do you think the
Exactly.
Kennedy name plays into this? Is that helping him considerably? Is it hurting him? What's your assessment?
Well, they try to weaponize it against him because, he said, and apparently, I mean, it's evident from looking at who's involved in the campaign when you go to the functions and see who's there, that not everyone in my family is on board with me doing this. Some of them are, members of the Biden administration. And not everyone believes, as I do, some of these things that I'm talking about. But I do, and that's why I'm doing it. And so I guess the name draws an audience. Let's see what this particular Kennedy has to say. But, it's a mixed bag. And it's certainly, to the extent that it has cachet, guess what? It was earned. What his father and his uncle did earned. What if he could pick up some scraps from that and use it to try to basically, the country was taken away from us when they killed his uncle. Okay? If he's going to use that legacy to try to get it back, I'm with that. I think that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Thoughts on that, Lori?
Me too. That's what we've waited a lifetime for. I wanted to show you.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Hear me all right? I just wanted to show you the line outside. That figures. I was just going to try and show you what the line looks like outside. Pretty
I've got it up
amazing
on the
here.
screen there. You can scroll down.
Hold on. I can do that too. Hold on.
My internet seems to be acting up. There we go. I got the little spinning circle going round and round. I hope I can show you
The sun
this.
is washing it out, but yeah. I got another shot.
My friend Matthew Tower took a nice crowd shot. He's standing outside trying to get in this long line of people, but for some reason that doesn't look like it's going to play. My apologies. Anyway, it's a long line. You'll have to take our word for it. Oh, you're shooting out the window there. There you go. I see the line. That's a lot of people. So, Don, how large do you think this venue is? Like, how many people can they squeeze in there?
I don't know. What is it? I'll look it up. I'll speak here. Dana Hall, right?
I'm looking for familiar faces behind him there.
575 seats.
Wow.
That's overflowing already. And
that's great. That's great. Might not be the size of a Trump rally, but give us time.
Yeah,
I think the momentum is going to keep building and building. It's still pretty early in the game.
I've told you, I think the best thing that could possibly happen to raise the political consciousness of the people in the United States, to elevate the entire conversation, the entire role of the people in this election, would be to have Trump and Kennedy debate. And honestly, I wish they would start doing it now, because I think it would elevate both of them, and more importantly, would elevate the voters, because these are the two candidates that have popular support. And the media and the political establishment, the DNC particularly, Rick, I keep wandering from that point. That is the key point, really. We saw what happened with Sanders and just in general, the theft of the primaries. And then I saw, anyone that was at the convention in Philadelphia saw, they had Sanders as if he was on a leash, because at the convention, I'm sorry.
Oh, pull your mic a little bit closer.
It was facing
down on the background noise.
It was facing the other way and about 1.5 feet away from me. Sorry about that. What happened? Okay, there were people that brought a lawsuit over the rigging of the primaries, and they alleged, it was a group of people, a class, as a matter of fact, in federal court in Florida, brought a case that said, we were told by the DNC public announcements that there was going to be a fair process for selecting it, and it was going to be using the primary process, etc. They have since admitted in court under oath that in fact they don't have to have a fair process, and so they didn't. That this is not some public corporation or a participatory democratic group. This is their little company, and they can run it however the hell they want. Therefore, when they told us this, and we relied on it to make contributions to the campaign and to spend time campaigning and all of that, it was a fraud committed to induce us to make the contributions. And so, number one, we want our money back and treble damages. So I think it was $50 million or $250 million or whatever. They wanted that back plus 3 times that for damages. And then we also want the court to this primary, that primary, that primary, set aside the results, install the Sanders delegates, have the vote count taken at that point, and that would have put Sanders over. So Sanders himself, knowing that this case is pending at the convention, gets up and says, Madam Chair, record the vote just so everybody knows what the delegate count was. And there's a legal reason for doing that.
Right.
That basically helps him cut his own throat. It's really the throat of his voters. And then he essentially called on the convention to nominate Hillary Clinton by acclamation. He legally did that. And so what that meant was that the lawsuit was moot. Because
that invalidated the lawsuit.
It doesn't matter if the delegate selection process was cooked, and it wouldn't have mattered if we didn't cook it. So forget the fraud and the inducement part. What happened is we did it by acclamation as we're allowed to do, and so it wouldn't have changed anything if we didn't do that.
That's exactly right.
Now, Bobby Kennedy, the question is, a lot of people are like, is he going to play that role or not? And the proof is going to be in the pudding, but I don't think so. I don't think you start out saying, instead of, gee, let's get rid of the TPP and this stuff. I mean, what Sanders was saying sounded good compared to, it's like a drop of water in the desert. Okay?
Compared to Hillary Clinton? Yeah, it sounded great.
Yeah. So, but Bobby Kennedy talking about the CIA killed my father and my uncle. Like everybody else knows that. Nobody says it out loud. No. And also, by the way, they're a captive agency whose purpose is to make endless wars so that the military-industrial complex has a steady stream of kit. Who's the only other person who says anything remotely like that is Trump, and he doesn't quite articulate it like that in that detail or that well. Okay,
and even on the JFK assassination, no presidential candidate that I know of in the entire history of my lifetime has ever come right out and said, I think the CIA killed him.
The only person I know that was ever elected to any office higher than dog catcher that ever said it was Cynthia McKinney, and they ran her out of Congress.
That's right. And they ran her out of the Congress. That's right. And for asking questions about 9/11.
Well, and a few other things along the same line. But this is the same thing that we have here with Bobby Kennedy. I mean, the things he's saying, these are the things that are supposed to remain unspoken. Trump is perfect, case of that. I hate to keep going back to him, but this is the first example we have of a real contrarian, candidate. When he was running in 2015, and he was a media darling before that. His stock and trade basically was the caricature of him that the media had. He was in the movies. He was, the stupid "You're Fired" show, all this nonsense.
The Apprentice.
They loved him. Yep. All these people now.
#1 show on NBC.
It was,
for 13 years.
Yeah. All these people now that would like to see him dead and fixed in the sense that they did the dogs. They used to be at the water cooler every day. Oh, did you see what happened with the? What? He's real popular. He's going to run for president. Everybody's like, oh, that's interesting. And then he says, maybe NATO is obsolete.
You can't say that.
Hold the harvest. and all of a sudden, and they tried to say, okay, turn off his mic, like they did with Dean, and like they have done with some others.
And Reagan, famously turned off his mic too. Remember, in New Hampshire, I believe.
Yep. Yeah. And so, but what they found out, as every 4 years, basically the news media makes their bones. Presidential election years, they get the bulk of their revenue for the 4-year period.
Yes. People
read the paper, watch TV and stuff, interested in the presidential election. Who knows why, but that is true. they were, tuning into CNN, MSNBC, and Fox like crazy, watching what's Trump going to do next.
Right.
And then they turned it off. They pulled the plug on him, and people said they stopped watching it, and they noticed it, and so they were like, okay, we can't do that. So then it was 24/7. Trump. Here's somebody that said Trump had relations with a sheep. Oh, here's somebody that sat behind Trump in kindergarten and said he passed wind, and now he couldn't concentrate anymore. Everything they could pull out of wherever they were throwing at him, and he got elected.
Yeah. And he just might do it again, Don. They might, they might throw him in prison and he might win.
Hey, what's his name? Eugene Debs. It's a fine tradition. He ran for president from jail cell.
That's right, 1920.
Martin Luther King did some of his best writing from a jail cell. So
he sure did.
I saw Nelson Mandela spent a lot of time in the jail cell, and he became president afterwards. So
that's right.
It's not hard to sell the image of a of a messiah, of a martyr. When they're making a martyr out of somebody right before your eyes, it just lends itself to that. And I think that if people don't want to see Donald Trump elected president, the surest way to have him elected president would be to have Joe Biden as the Democratic candidate.
Couldn't agree more with that.
So we are about
getting close, aren't we?
60 seconds away.
Yep.
Theoretically.
The sun sets. You can see the sun is making these weird patterns on my head.
Yes.
It's not. I haven't dropped acid, and I'm not sharing it with anyone. It's not what's happening. I'm melting, but I'm crouched. I have this equipment set up on a couch in this foyer here. There's a window here, and the sun is setting right in front of me.
Right in your eyes.
Yeah, right there. I don't mind it.
Do you need to go grab your seat, Don?
No, it's okay.
Not yet. It looks like everyone's still milling around. So,
not many. There's a few people, but it's not a lot. Everybody's inside. So when they start, I'll go. I can hang with you guys too long. And then I'm going to go try to place myself so I can have something for you when they finish.
That would be awesome. In fact, I'm hoping you'll get a chance to talk to our friend Eric Jackman of Jackman Radio. He's there.
Here?
Helping today. Yeah, he's helping with that.
Maybe
Eric's there, and our friend Matthew Tower, who co-hosts the RFK All the Way podcast with me. He's there. I don't even know if he's in the building yet. Last time I saw him, he was standing in the line outside trying to get in a few minutes ago.
If somebody texts me, or texts them rather, and tells them to come out, I see a corner of the foyer and a table I can set up on. And we could do that.
That would be awesome.
So actually, why don't you let me run so I can grab it before someone else does?
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you so much for your insights and for your reporting today. And we'll see you after the speech.
Thank you, too, also for the same thing.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Don. See you in a bit. Yeah, I bet they're going to have a late start, Rick. They're still trying to get all the people in the door and get them seated.
Yes, yeah. The timer, the clock has run out, but they're still not live. So with our link, so I'm just waiting for that to come online.
Yeah, this brings back memories of Boston, doesn't it? Let's hope it works better this time. You remember
they'll get their act together. Let's take a short break, and we'll come right back. And hopefully we get this show on the road. Don't go away.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
We're back.
We are. We don't know where.
And
where
here
Bobby
we go.
Kennedy is.
Here we go.
Is it time?
It's time.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's get this up and rock and roll.
Enjoy.
Feudalism in our country to poison our children and our people.
This is a pre-recorded
With
intro
chemicals and
from
pharmaceutical
the Kennedy
drugs to
team.
strip mine our assets, to hollow out the middle class and keep us in a constant state of war. These lockdowns were a war on the poor, and they were a war on American children. There's been a systematic attack on our middle class, and the coup de grace was the lockdown. The lockdown was the biggest shift in wealth in human history. I don't want, the Democratic Party to be the party of fear and pharma and war and censorship. "55 years ago last month, I sat as a 14-year-old boy behind my father as he announced his campaign for presidency of the United States. And my father at that time was in many ways, the same position that I'm in today. He was running against a president of his own party. He was running against a war. He was running at a time of unprecedented polarization in our country. And he had no chance of winning. My father, when he declared, had not a single molecule in him that he believed that he could win the Democratic nomination.
So they're still trying to get that stream online. I'll tell you this, I can't see, even though this is sort of their first live stream effort, there's no way this could possibly be worse than the DeSantis Twitter launch.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
Live and learn.
No matter what happens here, could not be. It's going to be better than that for sure.
You can't do any worse, right? You just can't.
What a dumpster fire that was.
Well, it's a nice little video they put together, some highlights from his Boston speech.
Yes, yeah.
Is he still talking?
Yeah, I just pulled the audio down a little bit because there's no video to go with it, but
yeah, that's interesting.
As a 14-year-old boy, what I saw from the windows of that train that day, in all of the urban train stations in Trenton and Newark and Philadelphia and Baltimore, they were crowded with black and white men singing the battle hymn of the Republic. God talks to human beings through many vectors, through each other, through organized religion, through the great books of those religions, through wise people, through art and music and literature and poetry, but nowhere with such detail and grace and color and joy as through creation. When we destroy a species, when we destroy a special place, we're diminishing our capacity to sense the divine, understand who God is, and what our own potential is as human beings. We deserve a president in this country who cares about these things and who talks about these things to the American people. My father, when he came back one time from the Delta, he said, we were all at the dinner table when he came in, and he said, I was in a tar paper shack today. I was smaller than this dining room, and there were two families living there, and the children get one meal a day. And when you get older, I want you to help those people. And when we would go into Southeast Washington or Appalachia, he would say to us, these are your people. These are Kennedy people. He said, the other people, the big shots, the corporations, the millionaires don't need the Kennedys. They have lobbyists, they have PR firms, they have lawyers. And he said, these are your people. And these are the people you need to spend your life helping. And when I'm president, I'm going to be president for those people. We're going to really take back this country. You give me a piece of ground and a sword, and I am going to take back this country with your help, the help of all the homeless Republicans and Democrats and independents who are Americans first. Thank you all very much.
Give me a
We're going
piece
to do
of
a
ground
mass
and a
experiment,
sword.
a new kind of mass experiment of what happens when you tell people the truth and see what happens. My job is to tell people the truth, and if Americans have an appetite for that, that I will be president.
What, a politician telling the truth? What a concept. Never heard of
This
that
is
one.
a time to bring America back together. We have been torn apart, and if anyone can bring it back together, it's the Kennedys.
I love that picture.
I hope that what he can do is to break through by just being himself, being his honest self, very selfless, very focused on doing the right thing. And hopefully people will be able to see that. But we are absolutely up against a major media wall.
Look at that. Crackpot.
The reason people were having fights with their family is because the families were being lied to about information and believing some family members believed the lies, some did not. And that caused the polarization, and it amplifies the vitriol, and it poisons all of society when the government is lying, when the media is lying to you, when the trusted source of information can no longer be trusted.
You know, it's really hard to tell how many people are awake and have, you know, how much this is exposed to the average American, because we're living in a sea of propaganda and censorship.
What's happened here today is that you have lifelong Republicans, lifelong independents, lifelong Democrats. It's time that we ended this schism. The people standing here today do not identify with any political party. We identify with unity, with health, with freedom. That's what's important about today.
My husband, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is going to come out and make a very important announcement. Are you ready for this?
The next President of the United States, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
My mission over the next 18 months of this campaign and throughout my presidency will be to end the corrupt merger of state and corporate power that is threatening now to impose a new kind of corporate feudalism in our country, to poison our children and our people with chemicals and pharmaceutical drugs, to strip mine our assets, to hollow out the middle class, and keep us in a constant state of war. These lockdowns were a war on the poor, and they were a war on American children. There's been a systematic.
Is this on loop?
It is
We've
now,
seen
yes.
that part.
So
Yeah.
So
they're just kind of killing time, waiting for him to take the stage.
Yeah, or whatever. We're seeing the video, but we have no idea what's going on behind the scenes.
Probably a mad scramble.
Well, it's just a few minutes past the start time, so
That's right. That's right.
I'm sure they'll get the feed properly configured shortly, and we'll.
So, I have a question, Rick. While we wait,
Yeah.
I've been wanting to ask you, and I'd like to ask our viewers out there also. You know, one of the big critiques that you hear about Kennedy, even from people who like him and like what he has to say, is they say, I just can't handle his voice, that speaking voice that's so gravelly and quavery. And they say that it makes it difficult for them to listen to him. And maybe it'll be hard for them to sit through a speech like this because of the vocal quality. As you guys know, or might know, he does have a vocal disorder called spasmodic dysphonia. And it's basically, as I understand it, neurological. And he hasn't had that all his life. You know, he used to have a normal voice until he was 42 years old. And it just came on, you know, late onset, late in life. And as the years go by, it is getting worse. You know, you can listen to him from 10 years ago, and he sounded gravelly, but not as gravelly as he does today. So I wanted to ask your thoughts, Rick. Do you think that that's a significant obstacle to him?
I think, yes, here in the beginning, if he gets enough momentum, I think people will become accustomed to it, desensitized to it over time as they listen to him more. But he'll have to get over that initial hurdle where people, I think, are having some difficulty with it, especially those who don't understand why he sounds the way he sounds. But over time, I think it may become a non-issue if you understand sort of what I mean. It's
Well,
I
it's
had
better than listening to Joe Biden talk nonsense.
well, that's right, and I mean he has important things to say, and he's eloquent, and he chooses his words carefully. Where Biden bumbles and mumbles and speaks in gibberish and says, "God bless the Queen, man," and the media covers for him constantly.
And then he falls
It's
down
ridiculous. Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
And he's
So
talking to dead people.
yeah, yes.
I mean,
But yeah, I mean, it is an issue, but I think he'll overcome that, and he may find a way to turn that voice, which may be perceived at this point as a liability, into an asset.
most of the comments I've read, I've probably read thousands of comments by now on his Joe Rogan interview that he did Friday. And, a lot of people complained about the voice, but the main thing they said was it was difficult at first.
Right.
It was difficult at first for me to listen to him. And then after my ears adjusted, took a few minutes for me to get used to it. But then I could hear him just fine and didn't have any trouble understanding him. And I got used to it.
Strange thing about his voice is it forces you to actually listen more closely.
Exactly. Because he can't really yell, he speaks kind of softly, which is refreshing in itself for a politician. Politicians usually yell at you when they give a speech. He literally can't get his voice that loud to yell. So,
Yes.
when someone speaks softly, it tends to make you listen closer.
It's very true.
And it's also something that unfortunately has handicapped him in some of his more contentious interviews. I don't know if you saw the interview that he did with Crystal Ball on Breaking Points, Crystal and Sagar, but they got into it. They got into a debate on the vaccines, and she has a normal voice, and she used the power of her voice to speak over him.
And Don is back, and maybe he can fill us in. What the heck is going on down there, Don?
It's pretty busy. It's pretty wild. I went out online and interviewed about a dozen people since I was on before. I uploaded that because I had to use a remote rig.
That's on your YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, it's on my YouTube channel already, though it's unlisted. But I sent it to you guys first, so you can click on the link as soon as they finish processing it. Maybe it'll be 5 minutes or something before that happens.
There you go, Rick. It's in the private chat.
Okay, we can
Have a link
bring
for you
those
there.
links up.
Yeah,
And
just,
folks, please do subscribe to Don DeBar's channel on YouTube. He is just at Don DeBar, all one word, right?
Yes, Don DeBar. YouTube.com/Don DeBar.
You guys will love his work. He does really, really good stuff.
Thanks.
Please
Thank you very
subscribe.
much. I do a lot of work anyway, that's for sure.
Yes, you do.
All right, let's bring these interviews up, and we'll run this fresh,
wow.
fresh
No kidding.
video for Don. Here we go.
Wow,
Hot off the presses.
that was quick.
Do we have audio?
We will. Yeah, you got to.
It appears we have no sound.
Yeah, that's what I'm being told.
It's there.
That's odd.
Yeah, I can hear the audio, but it's not.
It's just really soft, very faint.
Can you hear it on your end, guys?
When I play,
cannot.
I can't hear it when you're playing it. When I go to the YouTube page and play it, it plays normal. So
That figures.
it's something to do with the playback. So whatever the player you're playing it through either isn't getting funneled into StreamYard, or the player's audio might be set low. You might want to double check that. It might be.
Well, the audio's up, and it has something to do likely with the link and the way it's filtering through to the system.
Yeah.
Might still be processing.
No,
since
I'm
you
playing
just
it back.
uploaded.
I'm playing it back straight. It's actually I had to take my
Yeah.
headphones off when I did
I'll
it.
tell you what, I think the CIA is messing with this stream today. Am I paranoid?
No, it's not. You're only paranoid if it's not possible for that to
That's
happen.
right.
And I would say it's probably likely something is happening. We just don't know what yet.
Well, I'm messing with
You have this as unlisted or private on this link, Don?
You try. I had it unlisted. Why don't you? But I changed it. So why don't you refresh it? Maybe that's the problem. Maybe that's what it does.
It could be. Hang on just a moment.
Yeah.
Let me just pull this stream out,
Sorry, folks. Please stand by.
and we'll give it another whirl.
We're doing it live on the fly. You never know what might happen.
That's right. This is live TV, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to
How
be a
about
wild ride. We have sound this
Do we have
time?
audio now?
Do we?
Oh, darn.
I still don't hear it.
Still don't hear it?
No.
We have our viewers asking in the chat, where can I hear this thing?
I'm putting it right now on my Facebook page. I'm just doing it on my Facebook page right now. It'll be there in a minute, and I'll copy that also to. Let's see. Today's June 20th, 2023.
Maybe we can pick it up off Facebook. It might play
I'll try
better
that.
there.
Yeah.
We'll try and grab the feed out of there.
Okay, hold on. I'm doing it right now. Post. Oh, I'm going to copy.
YouTube is
All
acting
copy.
very strange today.
Yeah,
Very strange.
It is strange a lot of times. Hey, Dennis.
Especially when it's about RFK Jr. I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
that's right. Especially when it's
Just
about
saying.
anything that they don't like, and he's definitely in there.
And our American viewers out there, if you're watching us on YouTube in the United States, I bet you they made you sit through a Joe Biden ad to watch our show today.
Probably true.
Joe just bought another huge advertising package on YouTube this week.
Yeah, that figures.
And those ads are every 5 minutes on YouTube. Every video you click
man,
on.
really?
Hey, folks, it's Joe. It's going to make you listen to Joe Biden, whether you like it or not. Drives me crazy.
So are they were supposed to start like 20 minutes ago?
Not yet.
Don, or is that just
Dennis Kucinich just came in, and it looks like they're about getting ready to. See, hold on 1 second. Save. There we
They're
go.
probably still trying to get people in their seats.
You know what? Try refreshing that one more time, because after I made the change, I didn't save it, so it might not have clicked the switch.
Gotcha. Okay.
Sorry, I'm kind of a knucklehead.
We're all knuckleheads.
How about
here.
now?
You're
Can
in
you
good
hear that?
company.
Oh, I'm hearing something.
Aw. I just don't know why that's not giving us any sound. But at least we get a good look at the long line of people
Yeah, there's
trying to get in, even if we can't hear what they say. But
Was
yeah,
it
folks,
interesting?
So
you
still
can,
no audio.
Yeah, we're not
That's
hearing
nice.
it.
You can watch this later if you go check out Don DeBar's YouTube channel and his Facebook and his Twitter. He's also Don DeBar on Twitter.
Yeah, at Don DeBar, yeah.
Please do give him a follow.
Yeah, please do.
Are there any lip readers in the house?
It's an
How
interesting.
about a little sign language?
Yeah. That's a big one usually in politics too, right?
And if you want to donate directly to Don, there's a link to his donation page.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yes,
Support his
folks,
work.
I hope that you will help support Don. He's doing this at his own expense. He's got to pay for gas and hotel rooms and camera equipment that he's had to purchase and all kinds of expenses. So hopefully you can drop him a few bucks on PayPal and help him out, help a brother out.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, please. Yeah, help a brother out, damn it.
Help a brother out. We
Come
appreciate
on.
you helping us out
That's right. I
today.
appreciate you guys being there to help out. I'm glad you're doing this. I'm really glad you're doing this. This
Thank you,
needs
Don.
doing. This needs doing.
It does, and it feels like, we're taking a huge risk just by doing this. I mean, this is news coverage that every network should do. And for some reason, Maverick News, we seem to be the only ones doing it.
I know.
And it's cost us dearly. It cost me my YouTube channel.
Yep.
I'm permanently banned. And our channel here at Maverick, we've been permanently demonetized. We can't accept super chats. We don't get ad revenue. We don't get channel members. It's all gone.
It's getting quiet. It's getting quiet. I think
it is getting quiet.
Something's about to happen. Yeah, something's about to happen.
The suspense is building.
Yes, indeed. Yep.
So yeah, folks, we never know if we're going to be here on YouTube much longer. They might just kill the stream in the middle of the live stream. So if they do that, if we go dark, please go over to Rumble or BitChute. Are we on Odyssey, Rick?
Not broadcasting on Odyssey tonight. I ran out of stream.
Yeah.
Links.
Where are we broadcasting? What other platforms can people find
just
us on?
Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble tonight. Hopefully I can add
Twitter?
the other platforms for the next one.
Okay. No Twitter tonight?
No, I had to take the Twitter down so I could add the other Rumble channel.
Gotcha. Yeah, we do have multiple Rumble channels going at this time.
Cool.
Couple of YouTube channels, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot going on here. I think it's going to be an interesting night. People are surprised how well informed the people are that are here too. And the big thing, asking people first of all, are you here to observe or to support Robert Kennedy's candidacy? The bulk of the people here said they were here to support it. There was one young man said, I'm here to study his positions. I'm checking out everyone. He seems to be the most reasonable so far. That's what he said. And there was one young man, I'm going to guess around 12 maybe.
Wow.
He supports Bobby Kennedy because he's a falconer.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, he said he loves animals, and so do I.
Yeah, that's right. Bobby, he's been training exotic birds of prey all of his life. That's his passion in life, is falconry. And I just got an update from the Kennedy campaign. That live stream that they're doing was stuck on a loop. I'm told they just called and they're fixing it.
Okay.
So hopefully that'll be fixed pretty soon.
It had to happen, right? Something had to go wrong. It's just it's a rule.
It's hanging on somebody's desk in Langley, I bet.
You got it.
Right next to my file.
And mine.
Yeah, we all have files. I think we're like the file cabinet in the corner.
I bet they've known about us for a while.
Don, do you think that RFK Jr. is scoring a lot of points on social media? I mean, he's done a lot of the big name podcasters just in the last couple of weeks, and it seems like that is, to me, like it's given him a lot of forward momentum.
There's a synergy there too that I hope people understand as they handle this stuff. The people that come to
and come a little closer to the mic again. It's
sorry.
a little loud.
The people that come to social media, the people that come to us, in places like that, they go to even Rogan, Jimmy Dore, Pasta, and Fiona, all the people that are, doing this. On the one hand, we're shining a light on what's they're trying to hide. What is there that is hidden, we're trying to shine a light on so people can see it, just for the sake of seeing it, because they're entitled to see it.
Yeah.
And they need to see it. And I hope all of the candidates who will take advantage of that recognize that this is not something to take advantage of, get in office, and then to tamp down so they can then stay in power, resting on the same established mechanical processes. And I also hope that there's not like a league of people in our business saying, yes, that's right. Don't play that game with them. Play it with me. I'm hoping instead that the model is compelling in and of itself, that, hey, guess what? The people are allowed to hear from these people. They're allowed to hear ideas that are different from the prevailing narrative. As a matter of fact, it's the only thing that's going to give us a chance at survival as a species. Nobody decided that after massive study, this is the best route for humanity to take, and everyone else shut up. Because there's such a complex thing going on when you think about 7 or 8 billion human beings bumping around in the world every day. Now, as much information as they have on us, there's nobody that has an equation that can calculate this is what needs to be done for the betterment of everyone. They need us to be involved in the conversation, and right now we're not. This is the way people are getting involved in it. And I think it's a very important thing, and I think it's something that the people who are trying to get into power need to understand. They need to preserve. They need to fight like hell to preserve.
Damn right.
Sorry, I'm a little distracted here, so I'm going to get Lori to kind of take the floor here for a minute while I push some buttons.
Yeah,
I was pushing some buttons too. We're all scrambling here at the last minute. I'm getting some messages from people saying, hey, your stream is stuck on loop. So I'm trying to fix it. And I've got a bunch of people sitting in my YouTube channel going, hey, where's the show? So I'm trying to tell them where to go and come over here to the Maverick channel because my channel is dead. Dead and buried, folks. Please come over to the Maverick Multimedia channel on YouTube and also the Maverick News Freedom Reporters channel on Rumble, where we are live right now. And Don, I'm super excited about this speech tonight. I was just rewatching President Kennedy's address at American University on the anniversary last week. We talked about it here on the show, and you can't top that speech.
I know.
There's even his nephew, as great as Bobby is, could not hope to ever top a speech like that. I've never heard any other president or politician get anywhere close to it. So he's set the bar really high for himself here.
That's right.
I'm on the edge of my seat just wondering what he's going to say tonight and how that connects to what President Kennedy said in 1963. Because, as I was watching that speech recently, I thought, this speech could have been delivered this week, and it should be delivered this week. And really, all you'd have to do is swap out the words Soviet Union for Russia, and it's still as fresh and important now as it ever was.
And China. And, you'll recall in the post-game things that were learned after the Cuban, I'm going to use the term Cuban Missile Crisis because that's what people know. In fact, it was quite more than that. But one of the things that we learned was if the U.S. had that nuclear war, their war plans included nuking the hell out of China. They had like a whole fleet of B-52s that their package said China and cities in China. And that's where we are too. I mean, Blinken can go over to Beijing if he likes, and make a presentation about, it's all friendly and we're making friends and stuff. The Chinese know the U.S. military is in the South China Sea, bumping with them and flying planes over them and everything else. And if they dared to do that in Long Island Sound or the Gulf of Florida or even the Gulf of Mexico, or even the Gulf of California, we would be back to where we were in October of 1962, only without Jack Kennedy. Instead, we got this knucklehead. He doesn't even know he's wearing pants most of the time with his finger on the button. So, it's a pretty shaky situation that we're in right now. It's a very important time for him to be making this speech.
Yes.
Jack Kennedy, some of the things he said, he's talking about peace in 1963, 7-8 months after the Cuban Missile Crisis. What kind of peace do we seek? And not Pax Americana, not the U.S. imposed peace. He's talking about genuine peace, the kind that makes life on earth worth living, the kind that enables men and women to grow into hope and to build a better life for their children. And not merely peace for Americans, but peace for all men and women. Not peace in our time merely, but peace for all
peace
time.
In all time. Yeah, I love that.
When he closed the speech, the thing that I think is, really upset the folks at the CIA and may have had a role in his not being with us anymore. He said,
I think so.
Yep. He said,
I think so.
The United States will never start a war. We do not want a war, and we do not now expect a war. this generation of Americans has already had enough, more than enough, of war and hate and oppression. We'll be prepared if others wish it and alert to try to stop it, but we will do our part to build a world of peace where the weak are safe and the strong are just, confident and unafraid, not toward a strategy of annihilation, but a strategy of peace. And that was heresy in 1963. Heresy.
It was. And that's why I think that's the speech that got him killed.
Yep, me too. A lot of people think that.
He was starting to make those moves towards peace with our adversary, the Soviet Union. And what came out of that speech, most importantly, was the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty.
That's right.
Which was signed a month later with Nikita Khrushchev.
Yep.
A huge step forward.
They made that movie, 7 Days in May.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Right?
That's one of my all-time favorites.
And you had Kirk Douglas and a whole
Lancaster.
bunch of, Burt Lancaster, a whole a host of like Hollywood's biggest names at the time. In essence, a coup d'état takes place in the United States, and it's over the treaty. Almost takes place. A coup d'état is plotted by the generals and by a number of people in the Senate and the House, and it's because they don't want basically an arms treaty with the Soviet Union that reduces nuclear weapons, which is exactly what Jack Kennedy did. That movie was made in 1964, and it was released about 2 months after he was killed, as a matter of fact.
That's yeah, literally. And I think that came out in February of 64.
Yeah.
And they had to delay it because it just seemed too soon.
The funeral wasn't over yet. And really, I mean, it was made, that was, what's his name? Wasn't it? It was Stanley Kubrick? Did he make that movie? I forgot. Yeah, right?
Let's see. 7 Days in May?
Maybe
That
not.
was John Frankenheimer.
John Frankenheimer, you're right. Yep.
Yeah, a guy who did the Manchurian Candidate.
Same difference. Right.
Yeah, that's right.
That the Oliver Stone of the day.
He was. I love John Frankenheimer's movies.
Yep, I did too. And also, as a matter of fact, Stanley Kubrick too. I did anyway. So let's see what's going to come out. How's it look? Does it look like it's starting? Or
it says that it says there's an overflow crowd. Mm-hmm. The program will begin shortly when everyone is seated. So we're waiting for them to establish this link for us to take. The campaign is providing a live video feed out for us, so we're just waiting for that to start. And while we wait, Don, we've been kicking around some different ideas for titles or a name for our election coverage. We're trying to find the right domain, the right phrase or whatever. I did produce this, and this probably won't stick, but I'm going to run this for people, and the people in the chat can weigh in on this as well. And maybe we can come up collectively with an appropriate name for the election coverage we're going to be providing. And we're going to be covering all the candidates to some degree, so we're looking for a generic title, but we're really going to be focusing a lot on the RFK Jr. campaign because he's going to be one of the main players in this. I think it's probably going to come down to an RFK Trump race in the end. But here, let's take a look at this, and then you guys can comment.
Wow, Rick, that looks good. I like it.
Me too.
I like it. Do you guys like it?
Yeah, I like a lot. Hey, what do you think of this? A friend of mine suggested this today. MATA, Make America Think Again.
Oh, I love it. Make America Think Again.
That was Wendy Joy Welch.
Boy, do we need that.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm going to make up the hats, I think, and start wearing them. They'll have to be a little bigger, though, like a thinking cap.
So, Jane says it's great. So the name, though, was American Mandate 2024, Road to the White House.
I like that. I
Do
think
ya?
that's
Yeah.
I think that's good. It's generic and yet it's not.
See, there's so many cliched titles, right? And so if we pick something that's too common, some other network will pick it up and use it, and that might cause confusion. And a lot of these domains are not available, but we have that. So
I think it's a good one. I think it's
you
a very
like
good
that?
one. Yeah, I do.
What about that word mandate? Is
There's
that
something about
too-
that word mandate that
No,
just
no.
makes me cringe, though. 'Cause the last 3
Right.
years
Yeah.
and mandates, and Kennedy's the anti-mandate candidate. So even though the definition is correct, the word mandate, vote.
Yeah, see, some
same
other
thing.
people are already in the comments.
They not like that.
A few people are already picking up on it.
Ah, yeah.
But see, I'm old school, right? So I was thinking back to previous elections from
in the
like
before
years and years
times.
ago,
Yeah.
where
Back in the
mandate was
before
used.
times would have been fine.
But so it didn't quite dawn on me that, and I suppose it should have, especially after what
It's
we've
like,
been
oh,
through
the
last 3 years.
mandates. Oh, yeah,
yeah,
that's a
yeah.
bad word now.
Yeah.
Used to be a good word. Now
They
it's a bad
redefined
word.
it. They redefined it. I didn't think of that.
So help us, folks. Help us
you got
come up
any
with a
ideas?
good title.
Hey,
Good
Chad,
name.
help us out. You got any ideas? What should we call our election coverage? And it looks like I'm getting a message from the campaign that the speech is starting now.
Yeah.
Here we
We have a
go.
live stream, Rick.
We do. Here we go.
All right. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy.
Thanks.
And the home of the brave.
Oh, there's our friend Eric Jackman, Jackman
Hey,
Radio.
Eric, what's up?
Thank you. That was beautiful.
See our MC tonight.
Like his uncle, President John F. Kennedy, and father, Senator Robert F. Kennedy before him, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. understands that we need to go down a new direction in this country in regards to peace, trade, and economic strength. We must alter course and chart a new path where the rest of the world doesn't fear us, but wishes to emulate and engage with the United States in the spirit of mutual respect and peaceful cooperation. Town halls, debates, open forums are all part of the bedrock of the political process. This place, St. Anselm College and the New Hampshire Institute of Politics, has been at the forefront of this tradition. Hosting presidents, candidates, dignitaries, thought leaders from around the world to help better inform and engage citizenry and foster spirited discourse. The historic and essential New Hampshire primary tradition is under attack, and it's now more important than ever to make sure it stays number one. I'm so appreciative and grateful that Mr. Kennedy is committed to testing this process, and I'm honored to be on board with the campaign as one of his Granite State coordinators. With your help, we'll heal the divide, rebuild our nation at home, restore our standing on the world stage, and return a Kennedy to the White House. Ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to this journey with all of you, standing on this first piece of ground, a piece of ground mixed with some granite. And what we're going to do is heal this country. So please join me in welcoming my fellow New Hampshire coordinator, Rhonda Rohrbacher. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Rhonda Rohrbacher, and I'm proud to serve as the New Hampshire State Coordinator for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for President. For 16 years, Dennis Kucinich was one of the good guys in Congress. He was not afraid to stand up and speak out for what he saw as the truth, and for policies that benefit all of our people, not just the cronies. He never backed down when our civil liberties were threatened. He stood tall in opposition to the Patriot Act. And why do you suppose he did that? Because he read it.
That's right. That's what Ron Paul said, too. And he voted against the Patriot Act. Because I read it.
Dennis really
That's
was
what
ahead of
Cynthia
his
said,
time
too.
on many fronts. It's fitting now that he's the campaign manager for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who I consider to be the strongest advocate of peace, liberty, and truth in government to run for president in my lifetime. And ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce to you the National Campaign Manager for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for President, the Honorable Dennis Kucinich.
Thank you, each and every one of you, for being here this evening. Thank you for the hundreds who are waiting in overflow rooms for your patience and your presence. Thank you to the people watching at home from across America and around the world. Today, June 20th, is one of the days of the year filled with the most light, the portal of summer, when we bask in the full illumination of the sun. Our politics needs such light. They're often mired in the darkness of division, the tangled web of deceit, the lethal gas of censorship, with our nation's leaders fumbling, whistling mindlessly through the graveyards of history as they put us on the threshold of a catastrophic war. Throughout American history, in times of crisis, leaders have arisen who have assessed the danger ahead and were prepared to guide our ship of state to a safe harbor and our people to a new world. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is that man, the man of the hour, whose commitment to this country is part of an historic commitment that his family made many years ago. Where there is division, Robert F. Kennedy will bring unity. Where there is censorship, he will restore free speech. Where there is the darkness of untruth, he will bring the light of truth. Where there is war, he'll bring a gentle hand to calm the world and to guide it towards peace. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the light who shines in the darkness of American politics and will lead us to a new day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Dennis Kucinich, for your friendship and for your guidance and for all the hard work you put into this campaign. And thank you to St. Anselm's College for being an oasis of free speech during a time that was really a desert of censorship and suppression of dissent. And thank you to all the people of New Hampshire for keeping democracy alive, and particularly retail politics, which is what we need in this country. We need our politicians, instead of taking billions of dollars from billionaires and aerially bombing our country with advertisements, we need a place where politicians have to come and be vetted in barbershops and diners and gas stations and nail salons, and ask real questions by real people, and have to interact with Americans to understand what's happening on the ground level in this country today. And New Hampshire is the place where that happens. So we need to bring the primaries back here. 60 years ago this month, my uncle John F. Kennedy made an historic speech at American University in Washington, D.C. And that speech was called the Peace Speech. I'll give you some of the context for what was happening at that time. The previous autumn, he had been in the Oval Office with his science advisor, who I knew very well as a boy, and growing up as well, Jerome Wisner. And at that time, I'm 69 years old, and I remember at that time the regular photographs on the cover of the New York Times and the other papers of atmospheric testing in the Pacific Atoll. So we were seeing the mushroom clouds of the atom bombs, the hydrogen bombs, and nitrogen bombs that were going off regularly in that part of the world. And that day, my uncle was meeting with Jerome Wisner and asking him, he asked him at that meeting, what happens to the radioactive fallout? And Wisner said it circulates all around the globe very, very quickly, and then it drops back into the earth in the rain, and it gets into our fish, our animals, our ponds, our rivers, our streams, our drinking water. And it was raining at that time, and my uncle spent a long time staring out the window, and he said to Wisner, do you think it's in the rain that's falling right now? And Wisner told him it was. And Ted Sorensen, who was in the room at that time and who had been with my uncle through some of the most difficult times in his life, mourning the death of his brother, and was with him when he almost died during his back surgeries, said that all the years that he knew John Kennedy, there was no time that he saw him more troubled than that day. And that launched a resolution where he decided he wanted to ban atmospheric nuclear testing. He knew his State Department would oppose it, and he knew the Pentagon was going to oppose it. So he did the whole thing secretly with Castro. At that time, they had set up the hotlines so they could talk directly with each other, but he negotiated the entire treaty through a few trusted aides within the White House and diplomats who were shuttling back and forth under the nose of the State Department. When they negotiated very, very quickly, and when he announced it to the United States, his State Department and the Pentagon were in revolt, open revolt. In fact, his Pentagon brass were lobbying Congress to kill this treaty by their boss, the Commander-in-Chief. And I think something like 80% of Americans initially opposed the treaty. And he was determined to get it passed. And this speech turned the country around. It was the beginning of a process that turned the whole country around. This speech and the whistle tour that followed it, where he went to places where he did not have political support. He went to the South, he went to the Western states, he went and gave speeches at the Mormon Tabernacle in Salt Lake, people who had not supported his presidency. But he found tremendous support on the ground from all Americans for making this happen, because as it turns out, the intelligence apparatus and the military brass wanted the war, but the American people did not, and they wanted an end to it. And with the speech, he did something extraordinary, something that had never been done before. To me, it's his most important speech. It's one of the most important speeches in American history. And the thing that he did that was so unusual in that speech is he talked to the American people and asked them to put themselves in the shoes of the Russians. Everybody else was doing the opposite at that time. They were demonizing and vilifying the Russians. And he said, no, we have to put ourselves in their shoes, in the shoes of our adversaries if we want to have peace. We need to do that. It has to be a regular discipline. And at that time, most Americans, the zeitgeist of that era, I was born 9 years after the end of World War II. And the zeitgeist of our era, and the governing assumption was that America had won the war, and now we were going to rightfully dominate the peace. And he said something very, very different than to Americans that challenged that sort of patriotic assumption. He said, no, it was actually the Russians who won the war. They weakened Hitler and made it possible for us to march into Berlin. And he talked about the suffering of the Russians during the war and to legitimize their security concerns, which nobody was doing. Any show of military strength by the Russians at that time was portrayed as aggression. And what he was saying to the Americans is, no, they have legitimate security concerns the same as we do. And we need to understand those things. And he reminded Americans of the suffering that the Russians had endured during the war, the unimaginable suffering. 1 in 7 Russians had been killed during World War II. He said that, he asked Americans to imagine that all of the land, all of the cities, all of the towns from the East Coast to Chicago had been leveled to rubble, that the forests and fields had been burned. And he said, that's what happened to Russia during the war. That's what they sacrificed for us. And they have legitimate security concerns to make sure that never happens again. And that speech turned around the American people. And they ended up supporting that. It was one of the fastest ratified treaties in American history. I'm speaking to you today because the world is once again at a very similar crossroads. As in my uncle's time, nuclear tensions are at an extreme and dangerous level. As in his time, we have a unique opportunity not only to diffuse those tensions, but to take a radically different path, a path towards peace. My uncle's commitment to peace bore fruit in the Limited Test Ban Treaty of August 1963. But his assassination that November turned the nation down another path. His successors have launched one war after another, along with the ceaseless expansion of our military. Some call it the forever war. Americans used to identify herself as a peaceful nation. In fact, the framers of our Constitution said that believed that democracy was inconsistent with an imperium abroad, that if we tried to make ourselves an imperial nation abroad, that we would turn into a surveillance state, a garrison state, a security state at home, and that we would also destroy our economy. We would drain it as happens with every empire. Every empire ends itself through the expansion of the military, overexpansion of its military abroad. And the founders knew that. John Quincy Adams spoke for all of them when he said, America goes not abroad in search of monsters to destroy. Today, I want to recall that memory because this forever war, which has so drained our nation's vitality, now threatens to plunge the world into the unspeakable horror of nuclear Armageddon. And I speak, of course, of the situation in Ukraine. I abhor Russia's brutal and bloody invasion of that nation. But we must understand that our government has also contributed to its circumstances through repeated, deliberate provocations of Russia going back to the 1990s. Democratic and Republican administrations have pushed NATO to Russia's borders, violating our own solemn promise from the early 90s when we pledged that if Russia made this terrible concession of moving 400,000 troops out of East Germany and allowing the unification of Germany under a NATO army, a hostile army, that we would commit that after that, we would not move NATO 1 inch to the east. And James Baker gave that assurance, as did the British government officials and many, many others. And yet, today we have surrounded Russia. We have moved it not 1 inch to the east, but 1,000 miles and 14 nations. We have surrounded Russia with missiles and military bases, something that we would never tolerate if the Russians did that to us. And statements from our government officials and think tanks lay out the goals for the Ukraine war: regime change in Russia, the overthrow of Vladimir Putin. This is what President Biden has said is our purpose in the Ukraine: the disabling and exhaustion of the Russian military and the dismembering of the Russian Federation. None of these objectives have anything to do with helping the Ukraine, which of course was the pretext for our involvement in the war. That's when our leaders told us that we were there for a humanitarian mission, but they've since acknowledged that there is a broader geopolitical agenda and that Ukraine is simply a pawn in a proxy war between the United States and Russia. Like teenagers playing World of Warcraft, these warmongers inside US leadership draw up war games and scenarios and pretend that a nuclear war is winnable. That is a dangerous lie. It's an illusion that my uncle's Defense Secretary, Robert McNamara, called mass psychosis. These individuals do not appreciate what John F. Kennedy understood when he said of nuclear war, quote, "All that we have built, all that we have worked for would be destroyed in the first 24 hours. Even one nuclear explosion spreads radioactivity around the world. Can you imagine the consequence of a full nuclear exchange?" President Kennedy did. That's why he said, quote, "Above all, while defending our own vital interests, nuclear powers must avert those confrontations which bring an adversary to a choice of either humiliating retreat of a nuclear or a nuclear war. To adopt that kind of course in the nuclear age would be evidence of the bankruptcy of our policy or a collective death wish for humanity." Let me say that again. Nuclear powers must avert those confrontations which bring an adversary to a choice of either humiliating retreat or a nuclear war. The shameful fact is that for the last 20 years, the advocates of a militaristic foreign policy within the US leadership have done exactly the opposite. Their belligerent strategy of maximum confrontation extends beyond Russia to China, with the same group within our government hopes to use Taiwan as a geopolitical pawn, the same way they used Iraq and Syria and now Ukraine, to further a vain fantasy of world domination through violent confrontation. Let's leave off geopolitics for a moment and take the matter of war and peace a little deeper. President Kennedy understood that peace begins with our basic attitudes and beliefs. He spoke of the futility of passively waiting for the other side to become enlightened. We, quote, "We must examine our own attitudes," he said, "as individuals and as a nation, for our attitude is as essential to theirs," end quote. We should, he said, begin by looking inward. Yes, back in 1963, a politician really said that. A political leader voiced what would be considered today a spiritual maximum or a spiritual principle. Let's take up that call from 60 years ago and ask Americans, all of us, to re-examine our attitude. We have been immersed in a foreign policy discourse that is all about adversaries and threats and allies and enemies and domination. We've become addicted to comic book good versus evil narratives that erase complexity and blind us to the legitimate motives and the legitimate cultural and economic concerns and the legitimate security concerns of other peoples and other nations. We have internalized and institutionalized a reflex of violence as the response for any and all crises. Everything becomes a war. The war on drugs, the war on terror, the war on cancer, the war on climate change. This way of thinking predisposes us to wage endless wars abroad, wars and coups and bombs and drones and regime change operations and support for paramilitaries and juntas and dictators. None of this has made us safer, and none of it has burnished our leadership or our moral authority. But more importantly, we must ask ourselves, is this really who we are? Is this what we want to be? Is that what Americans' founders envisioned? Here's another spiritual principle, one that my uncles also referred to, when he said, quote, "We are both caught up in a vicious and dangerous cycle, with suspicion on one side breeding suspicion on the other, and new weapons begetting counterweapons. When we hold others in the belief that they are implacable enemies, they tend to mold themselves accordingly to our view of them. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy or prediction that launches all players into a cycle of suspicion that my uncle warned against. Inhabiting the role of an enemy, we empower hardliners in places like Russia, China, Cuba, and Iran. We invite them into the drama of conflict, the drama of provocation and counter-provocation, of weapon and counter-weapon. Is it any wonder that as America has waged violence throughout the world, violence has overtaken us in our own nation? It has not come as an invasion. It has come from within. Our bombs, our drones, our armies are incapable of stopping the gun violence on our streets and schools, or domestic violence in our homes. I see the same link here as my father and Martin Luther King saw about the Vietnam War. They saw that war. They believed that we could not have warfare abroad without bringing that violence home to our streets, to our attitudes, to our communities. Foreign violence is inseparable from domestic violence. Both are aspects of a basic orientation and a basic set of priorities. Waging endless wars. Waging endless wars abroad, we have neglected the foundation of our own well-being. We have a decaying economic infrastructure. We have a demoralized people and despairing people. We have toxins in our air and our soil and our water. We have deteriorating mental and physical health. These are the wages of war. What will be? What will be the wages of peace? They will be healing of all the symptoms of America's decline. None of these are beyond our capacity to heal. We can restore America to the awesome vitality of the original Kennedy era. My uncle said it well. He said that no problem of human destiny is beyond human beings. He warned us that, quote, "Too many of us think that peace is impossible. Too many of us think it is unreal. But that is the dangerous and defeatist belief. It leads to the conclusion that war is inevitable, that mankind is doomed, that we are gripped by forces that we cannot control. We need not accept that view. Our problems are man-made, and therefore they can be solved by man." So how do we actually do that? We started by replacing the vicious cycle of suspicion with a virtuous cycle of trust building. We reverse escalation. It takes courage to make the first move toward peace. Let's see what happens when we stop the provocation and the escalation and offer instead an olive branch. Each step we take invites those who we call our adversaries to take a step further. Maybe Russia won't respond. Maybe they won't respond in kind or in any way, but at least we will know that we tried, and the whole world will know it too. That step comes from a changed attitude and from courage. Speaking in the midst of the Cold War, John Kennedy asked us, quote, not only to see the distorted and desperate view of the other side, not to see conflict as inevitable, accommodation as impossible, and communication as nothing more than exchange of threats. Let's take a moment and allow that to sink in. Today, America has broken off practically all diplomatic contact with Russia, so that communication has indeed become little more than an exchange of threats and insults. FDR met with Stalin, JFK met with Khrushchev, Nixon met with Brezhnev, Reagan met with Gorbachev. Can't Biden meet with Putin? Do we have, can't we? Or can't we at least begin a conversation? Do we now have such a distorted and desperate view of the other side that we won't even speak to them? To see conflict as inevitable has become the cornerstone of US foreign policy. 2 or 3 decades ago, it was the clash of civilization between Islam and the West. Today, those legions of think tanks that are funded by the defense industry exhort us to prepare for the inevitable war with China. But war is inevitable only if we make it inevitable. The war in Ukraine could have been avoided even as late we now know as spring of 2022, when US officials sent Boris Yeltsin to Kiev to scuttle peace talks between Ukraine and Russia, a peace agreement they had already signed. And not only that, Russia had already begun removing its troops from the Kiev area. We now know this. This war was not inevitable. It was the creation of a relentless mentality of war and domination. At the height of the Cold War, JFK was willing to see beyond the prevailing stereotypes of Russia and its leader, Khrushchev, as the epitome of evil. The two men at that time exchanged 26 highly personal and private emails among each other. We had a KGB, a GRU spy who used to come to my home when I was a little boy, and we knew he was a spy. And this was the time that the James Bond films were all coming out, and we considered it, very sort of romantic and dangerous to have a real spy, Russian spy in our house. But he was a very charming guy. He was kind of a short and extremely strong, and he would do rope climbing contests with my father and push-up contests, and he could do the Cossack dancing. Which was really impressive to all of us, and he taught us to do it. And he had a great sense of humor, and he was filled with laughter, and my father and mother enjoyed his company a lot. They met him originally at the Russian embassy at a party. But the State Department was horrified that we were letting a KGB spy into our home. But during this period, my uncle wanted to talk directly to Khrushchev. The CIA didn't know anything about what was happening in the Kremlin, and they always thought the worst. They always told him the worst was happening, and he knew enough about politics to know that it couldn't be that bad. And ultimately, Khrushchev sent him the first of these letters, hidden in the New York Times through Bolshoi. And these letters ran the State Department. Both my uncle and Khrushchev realized during this correspondence that they were both surrounded by an intelligence apparatus and by military brass who considered war both inevitable and desirable. And that if they were going to maintain peace, they needed to talk to each other because they could not trust the people around them to give them strong, disciplined advice. And at that same time, my uncle and Khrushchev installed a hotline which had never existed before. So when I was a boy, there was a red phone at Hyannisport and another one in the White House, where we knew that if we picked up that phone, we were supposed to stay away from it, and we did, because that was the one thing they said: don't ever touch that phone. But we knew if we touched that, if we picked up that phone, Khrushchev was going to answer. And the wires from that phone are still sticking out of the wall of my brother's house, which was at that time was the summer White House. But they knew they had to talk to each other if they were going to save the world. They said, you know, that first letter from Khrushchev, he said, we're all on an ark, and we can't build another one. The earth is an ark, and we need to preserve it. And the question now is, are we willing to do anything like that today? Or are we going to remain stuck in a self-righteous story in which America is categorically good and our opponents are irredeemably evil? If we remain stuck there, so will every other nation. It's not only America that's fallen into this simplistic good guy, bad guy thinking. That's the example we've set for everybody in the world. No wonder it's been replicated everywhere, between Israel and Iran, between India and Pakistan, between Shia and Sunni, between Jew and Arab, between Hindu and Muslim, left and right, between pro-life and pro-choice, between vax and anti-vax. This tribalistic, us versus them thinking is tearing us apart. And it's... And it's tearing apart our country, and it's tearing apart the world. So these are the wages of war. But when we take the first step toward peace, we will become once again a true world leader, a moral authority. And our example, it doesn't take much, it's just the first step. And people will start looking at America differently, the way they did when my uncle was president. My uncle, I pointed this out in my announcement speech. My uncle was so determined. He told one of his best friends, Ben Bradley, said to him, "What do you want as your epithet on your gravestone?" And he said, "He kept the peace." He said, and Bradley asked him to explain that, and he said, "The primary job of an American president is to keep the country out of war." That's what he said. And during his time in the White House, he was surrounded by military hogs and his intelligence apparatus, his military brass, who were constantly exhorting him to go to war in Laos, in Berlin, in Cuba, in Vietnam, and he never sent a single combat troop abroad during his term in office. They wanted him to send 250,000 combat troops to Vietnam. He ended up sending 16,000 advisors who were not, under the rules of engagement, allowed to participate in combat. That's fewer people, fewer men. And he sent to get James Meredith, one black man, into Ole Miss, the University of Mississippi in Jackson. And a month before he died, in October of 1963, he heard that a Green Beret had died in Vietnam, and he asked one of his aides to give him a total casualty list. And the aide came back, and the casualty list had 75 Americans on it who had died in Vietnam. And he said, "That's too much. We're not going to have a single more American died." That day, he signed National Security Order 263 that ordered every U.S. service person home from Vietnam, with the first 1,000 leaving the next month, and beginning in November. And that, he died a month later. And a week after his death, that order was remanded. And President Johnson ended up sending 250,000 troops by President Johnson. President Johnson ended up sending 250,000 troops. Ultimately, 560,000, 56,000 never came home, including my cousin, George Skakel, who died in the Tet Offensive. And we killed 1 million Vietnamese. We've then gone off on this path with a military-industrial complex which President Eisenhower warned about a week before, or 3 days before my uncle took office, in the best speech that he ever gave, and one of the most important in history, where he warned America that if we did not take great pains to avoid it, the emerging military-industrial complex would devour our democracy. It would destroy American values from within. And my uncle knew that. He knew that speech, and he spent the 3 years, his 1,000 days in office, fighting against the rise of the military-industrial complex. After his death, we went down that path that Eisenhower predicted, and that's where we are today. And it's time now to reverse that. It's time. Thank you. As I said before, peace comes from a changed attitude. At the bottom of the war mentality, that casts the world into a drama of enemies and threats and lies a debased view of human nature. When you see humans as fundamentally selfish and whole nations as fundamentally evil, then all you have available to change their behavior is threats and bribes. Peace comes from a different place. It starts by seeing within others and within ourselves that which is not selfish, but is brave and generous and idealistic and has good intentions. And I'm not saying that we should ignore the base elements of human nature or the dangers of the world. But if that's all that we see, and we're going to be stuck forever in the mentality of war. And that's where the military-industrial complex wants to keep us. And we will reap forever its poisonous fruits. To chart a course for the future of our nation's military and foreign policy, I'll return once again to the words of John F. Kennedy. He said, quote, "America's weapons are not provocative. They are carefully controlled. They are designed to deter and capable of selective use. Our military forces are committed to peace and disciplined in self-restraint. Our diplomats are instructed to avoid unnecessary irritants and purely rhetorical hostility." End quote. The current administration is going to be in power for another year and a half, but the danger of reckless escalation and nuclear brinksmanship is real and present. I therefore call on our present leadership to adopt President Kennedy's maxims and to start de-escalating right now. I call on them to fulfill John F. Kennedy's declaration. I call on the military establishment to exercise disciplined self-restraint. I call upon the State Department to avoid unnecessary irritants and hostile rhetoric. And here's the most important thing of all. I call on every American to join in a new peace movement, to make your voices heard, to reject the insanity of escalation, and to celebrate no longer the wartime president, but a president who keeps the peace. And to what kind of peace do I refer? I'll end with one more piece of wisdom from my uncle. Quote, "What kind of peace do we seek? Not a Pax Americana enforced on the world by American weapons of war. Not a peace of the grave or the security of a slave. I'm talking about a genuine peace, the kind of peace that makes life on earth worth living, the kind that enables people and nations to grow and to hope and to build a better life for their children. Not merely a peace for all men and women, but not merely a peace for our time, but a peace for all time." Thank you all very much.
So the interest in this has been extraordinary, and this is an historic, pivotal moment. And the election of Robert F. Kennedy president starts right here in New Hampshire, and we need your help. Please visit Kennedy24.com to volunteer. And please remain seated for just a few moments for security reasons. We're also going to be splitting into breakout sessions. So take a look at your program if you'd like to participate in the program that you're interested in.
Okay, guys. So.
Wow.
That was something, wasn't it?
I'm blown away.
Yeah,
Not going to lie. I'm absolutely blown away by everything I just heard. Wow.
Yeah, that was nice. It's remarkable. The diet of bovine manure that we've been fed by politicians for decades now, standing in comparison to this, it stands out pretty, like in stark relief.
Well, Lori, you talked about his voice.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I thought that he sounded very presidential.
Yeah, he did.
You
He
don't have to
does.
insult him. No.
I mean, we've had presidents with disabilities before.
Yeah.
FDR was in a wheelchair.
Yep,
President
that's right.
Kennedy was, he had a bad back and he had all sorts of, life-threatening conditions. But, of course, the American people weren't told a lot of that. And back in the day, FDR was never photographed in his wheelchair. He had an agreement with the press that they would never show his wheelchair because it seemed to make him look weak.
Yep.
But never have we had a president with a vocal disability before. At least FDR had a strong speaking voice. And of course, we know Kennedy made great speeches, had a wonderful voice. So this is kind of new to have a president with a vocal disability, but ain't nothing wrong up here.
Yeah.
It's not a brain disability. It's just a vocal.
No, but I'm getting used to the voice.
Are you?
It becomes a non-issue
Yeah.
with me after it's already is a non-issue for me at this point. And I think the public will become desensitized to it and accustomed to it as well. But it was what he said. It was the content that was most important. And I thought that he was very, very presidential. It was a thoughtful, intelligent speech. And we don't generally get that these days from really any of the other candidates out there.
That's right. And, I was sitting there taking notes while he was speaking, and several things that he said really jumped out at me. But I like how he framed it as, for so long in the United States, we've waged a war on everything, a war on drugs, a war on poverty, a war on climate change. And then we waged war on much of the world also at the same time. And he said, when you do that, waging war on everything becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's all you know how to do is wage war.
Where you going? Going to war.
Yeah. That's the American way, isn't it? We just declare war on anything and everything and everyone that we don't like, or that we disagree with.
He's like, is this what we want to be known for? That's what he said.
That's what we are known for.
Yeah, that's what we are known for. That's right.
He wants to change that.
Yep.
And I
Me
want
too.
a president who'll change that.
Yep.
I don't like that image of us in the eyes of the world. They think of America as the bully, the big bully of the world.
And with that reputation, it is not sustainable in the long run because if people view you that way, they're not your friend.
Yeah. Look at how quickly all these countries jumped into the other camp as soon as there was another camp to jump into.
There you go. BRICS.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You
They were like, finally, here's our chance to get even.
you had Argentina, Nigeria, now Bangladesh. Half the Arab states, countries in Latin America and Asia. Look at the Belt and Road Project, the SCO, Mercosur. what is it, the CELAC, all these different multilateral groupings all around the world. And one of the primary foundational characteristics is the United States is not a member.
Right.
You know?
Just like we're not a member of the International Criminal Court, but we want to put Putin on trial at the ICC.
Right. Yeah. That's
and
cute.
because they've weaponized the dollar, they're actually undermining the long-term integrity of the economy as well.
Yep, sure. People are like, well, if the dollar's a weapon, we're not using it.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, they don't have to. They have their own currency, and in fact, the ruble is performing better than the dollar.
I know, it's true.
Let that sink in. And, he said also, he's talking about our domestic problems. This is a foreign policy speech, but he also did take time to talk about the bigger issues that Americans face every single day. The inflation, the housing crisis, the financial crisis, the cost of housing, the cost of food, the cost of fuel, utilities, all the basics of American life that are becoming quickly unaffordable, and our broken society in terms of mental illness, in terms of gun violence, domestic violence. He connected that to our wars abroad, just the way that his uncle, President Kennedy, did, the way that Dr. Martin Luther King did. That's how he framed his argument against the Vietnam War and his war on poverty. And he really made a beautiful argument that ending the wars abroad is the key to healing our broken society at home.
That's absolutely right. There's that guns and butter argument that's been like a conundrum for as long as there've been guns and butter demands. and Dr. King, he said when he gave the why I opposed the war in Vietnam speech a year to the day before he was murdered, probably for saying it, that every dime that goes to the military is something that could. I had hoped after all of our struggles that we were finally going to see the day that the money that was necessary to solve the problems of the poor was going to be appropriated and handed over. And I've seen it sucked right out of the bank and sent over to Vietnam to kill people over there. It's the same thing that we just heard. It's still going on.
It's funny that Eisenhower, who was a Republican, said the same thing.
And a general.
I'm
sorry. The Supreme Allied Commander. That's right.
NATO.
The general. That's right.
General.
Yeah. And that's what he said.
He said the same thing.
But he was exiting stage left when he said it. And Jack Kennedy was dead center when it.
Great point.
Yeah.
Great point.
Yeah.
But what do you think, Don? Will this resonate within the Democrat Party? Will they embrace this and give him a shot?
That's the question.
That's a question. The question is, if they don't, who's going to be more relevant, Bobby Kennedy or the Democratic Party? Because it ain't the only game in town. That's what I've heard anyway.
It's crazy, isn't it, Don, that we hear more talk of peace and ending the war and actual votes in Congress to pull the funding for Ukraine, end this war. We're getting that from the Republicans.
That's right.
So far, not a single Democrat in Congress has voted for any measure to dial back this incredible money that we're sending to Ukraine. They have done nothing, absolutely nothing, to try and bring this war to an end. This is a Democrat war. Make no mistake about it.
You can see this guy, a cat from the Bronx named Jose Vega.
Oh, I know Jose.
Yeah. You see him chasing those people down, trying to get the squad and a lot of them, the people from the CBC and from the Progressive Caucus and all these other ones, trying to get them to say something against the war. And they hide and run and have him kicked out and dragged
thrown out.
He keeps coming back. He keeps coming back strong. And the funny and also Barbara Lee. I'm the only one that voted against the authorization for military force. And she's been voting to fund every damn war since.
She has turned warmonger. It's so disappointing.
I don't know that she turned.
Used to like her.
It's easy to vote no in the face of 534 yeses.
Right.
And the people that you work for always need somebody. Well, okay, look, everything else failed. We got to have somebody with the credentials to put them out front and say, well, she voted against it, so she must be okay. because she ain't performed as if that was a heartfelt, principle.
That's
Not at
true.
all. Why isn't she standing? Look, I'm her. I have those credentials. My behind is down by the press gate at the White House, sitting out there and organizing people to come down there and stay there until they drag that, demented person out of the White House, or they stop killing people. It's not hard to call for it.
That's right.
But nobody's doing it. It tells you everything about it.
It does. And so much of the problem here, I think, with our foreign policy, and Bobby agrees with me because he just said so in the speech, is there's not dialogue with the other side, especially in the Russia-Ukraine situation. Our diplomats refuse to speak to their diplomats, and they've got amazing diplomats, guys like Sergei Lavrov, and they've got Dmitry Polyansky, their ambassador to the UN, who's been a guest on this program. And matter of fact, Ambassador Polyansky will be back here very soon on Maverick News. I just talked to him today, and we're going to bring him in sometime in July. So he'll be back soon. But, these are wonderful diplomats. They're very skilled at what they do. And typically, historically, Russia has always had excellent diplomacy and diplomats. So, they're willing to talk. And we just saw Putin a couple of days ago, whip out the paperwork and show us the receipts for when they negotiated a peace deal with Ukraine last year.
That's right.
And the West tanked that.
Yeah, they did. And then afterwards they said, well, what we were really doing was buying time to arm Ukraine.
Just like the Minsk Accord. Now they admit that they never intended to follow that they only signed it to buy time to build up their military capacity.
So I had the privilege about a month before he died, actually, of meeting Vitaly Churkin, who was the Russian ambassador to the United Nations before Benzi was now and he's also, by the way, a lot of respect for him. So it was like a cocktail party for the UN press corps. And somebody invited me to go down because I was doing some work with RT at the time. And so I got
just a little closer, would you?
So
it's a good story. I don't want to miss it.
Yeah. I got a chance to get stand next to him for a little bit and chat. And after we exchanged niceties and ordered a drink, I said, I got to tell you something, because I've been watching the Security Council meetings. I was doing a half-hour newscast Monday through Friday for like 10 years at that point for radio. And so I had to always find material. And one of the things I did was just watch the UN Security Council meetings and, twice a week, maybe cull something from that. So I'm watching him and the different clowns that we had down there, Susan Rice and Samantha Power and lessers, if there are any. And I said to him, I have really a lot of respect for you. I've been watching you for years now. Sit in a room with people that can't shine your shoes and listen to them insult you and the people you represent, and really insult pretty much everyone's intelligence. And you take it calmly, with grace, and with something that they don't have, which is dignity. And I have a great deal of respect. I said, because if it was me, I'd smack it out of him.
You're a New York kind of guy, New York, we settle it like this.
and he laughed. he laughed.
But and Bobby said this in his speech. He said, FDR met with Stalin.
That's right.
Several times.
They had an ongoing dialogue
at Tehran, and then they met again at Yalta.
Potsdam, Yalta. Yeah, right.
And they were constantly corresponding and actually had what I would call a kind of friendship. FDR and Stalin got along and respected one another. Kennedy met with Khrushchev. It was his top priority as soon as he got into office, and he got past that Bay of Pigs thing. In May of 1961, Kennedy flew over to Vienna and had a summit with Nikita Khrushchev right off the bat. That was one of the first things he wanted to do. Now, that summit didn't go very well, as we all know, but that was a first step. It was important to have that face-to-face with the other guy. And actually, a human connection.
And Kennedy actually referred to that as a first step.
Yes.
In hindsight. And I like the way Bobby Kennedy today said he referred to that teletype that they used to have as email, which it is. It's, if you think about
like
it,
a fax machine of the day.
yeah. And that's what they had. They installed it so that they could exchange correspondence like at will. And in October 1962, as a matter of fact, that was a good part of the reason that we are here, instead of, in some people's cases here, not ever existing. In my case, being, would be a 61-year-old wisp of steam somewhere, radioactive steam. It's because they had those channels open. And there was sane people on either end of it too, which is another matter. Because even if you have a phone in one hand in Moscow and a banana or something in your hand in the White House,
or a big red button on the other hand, Yeah. I mean, it all depends on who is in charge.
Yeah.
And are they really in charge? Because I would posit, after what happened to President John F. Kennedy, excuse me, I'm not so sure that he was really in charge. I think Dallas was about letting everybody know who was running the country.
Right. I agree with
it was not John F. Kennedy.
And I think not only do you think that, and I think that, and others think that, the people that count think that also. Almost everyone that's been president since then knew who was in charge and what would happen if they cracked, on the wrong side of their mouth. And I think that was the purpose of it, and it's been very effective. Even Reagan, Mr. Tough Guy, and reading lines off of whatever they had.
They showed him like 2 months after he got into office.
They shot
tried to kill him. They shot him.
They shot him. Oops. Yeah. I must have misread the script. Wait a minute.
Any questions, Ronnie?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, and when they were negotiating in Reykjavik, almost nuclear disarmament, he got the word. He got the word.
Yeah. So where does that leave RFK Jr. if he gets elected?
You go to the people and you tell them what's going on, which he's already started doing.
Yep.
And so when they start pushing on him, and if they threaten to kill him, or if they do kill him, we're ready for it. Because A, we know what the game is, and B, we have nothing else to lose. They've taken so much from most of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, he's at that point, like the rest of us, where he doesn't give a damn. If you want to kill me, make a martyr of me. I don't care. You'll only make me more powerful in death than I am in life.
Obviously, he doesn't. He may be afraid. It's not just making the decision for him, or else he would never even think about doing this. This is the one thing that Kennedy doesn't do. Okay, you got all this money. You stay in Hyannisport and float in the afternoon in whatever the water off of Hyannis. You enjoy yourself. You fly around. You ski. You have a good time.
It's good to be a Kennedy. Kennedy. Why spoil that by running for office?
And especially president. You could run for Senate or Congress and have a nice little cushy job, a little but he's not doing that. And then if you're going to run for president, of course, you could just, don't crack out a turn. You know what the script is. Read the script. Let's put a Kennedy face on it, and everything will be cool. He's not doing that.
No, so you think that he is really going to drain the swamp?
I do.
Put it this way. I think by saying he's going to do it and having Trump continue to say he's going to do it, the American people are going to understand that the next task before us is to drain the swamp. And so whether either of them do it or someone else, the American people are going to be like, "Oh, get out of the way. We'll do it ourselves."
But I have to tell you, Don, I supported Trump in 2016, and I wanted him to drain the swamp. That's why I voted for him. That's why the American people sent that man to Washington. And did he? Can anybody give me any examples of how President Trump actually drained the swamp? Now, he talked about it, but once he got into office, it was kind of a different story. He gave the swamp almost everything they wanted in the end. He did.
I just heard from Jose Vega. Hey,
Oh,
what's
yeah?
up, brother? How you
Hi,
doing?
Jose. You know what? I have a funny story to tell you.
Go ahead.
When the campaign sent me the confirmation about this event, you probably got one too, like,
Yeah.
to confirm
Press
your
list.
media
Yeah.
credentials.
Yeah.
They had this note attached to it at the bottom that said, anyone who causes a disruption is subject to removal or arrest.
I didn't see
And
that.
I sent
That's the
that
Jose
to Jose.
Vega
I said,
clause.
they put that in there just for you, Jose.
Well, see, I flew a sortie with him. We went. I live in the 17th congressional district in New York.
Right.
I live in Ossining, which is where Sing Sing Prison on one end and Maryknoll on the other. That gives you an idea how schizophrenic Austin is. And Jose lives in the Bronx. My Congress critter is a guy named Mike Lawler. He's a Republican. They reconstituted the district yet again. They've been doing it's a very volatile district. And this time, like last time, it is a toss-up district. A Democrat wins by 3/2 of a vote, or a Republican wins by that much. And so whoever's in there, they're not. It's not like you have a lifetime career there. You've got to do some stuff. So they had a opening of a Republican campaign office in Peekskill, New York, which is the next town up for me, last month. And I saw that Lawler was going to be there. And Lawler is one of the most aggressive members. He's a freshman in Congress. He just got elected and took office at the beginning of 2021. And I'm sorry, 2023. And he's on the board of this organization that is an arm of the State Department that's in the forefront of this decolonized Russia nonsense. He organizes people from every angry constituency in Eastern Europe or inside the Russian Federation to try to organize and overthrow the Russian government. That's what their job is.
Yeah.
He's in the forefront.
Same old script.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
So they think they're going to recreate 1991. They're insane, but that's what they think. And
Yep.
so anyway, Lawler's going to be at this thing. So I'm like, hey, Jose.
Hey, let's go, Jose.
He came, another friend of mine, Bennett Weiss, who's the guy I told you about with the sign. Goes to these different places and just holds up a sign about the Ukraine war and sort of takes their temperature. The three of us went to this event, and it was kind of like the okie doke because nobody recognized us. But if they were going to recognize anybody as like, there's the disruptor, there was Jose. But he stayed over here while I did it first. And then when they started coming to me, he went out and it was great.
It's brilliant the way that you guys do that. Like
it's him.
They've got it all worked out. Like you go first and you get thrown out.
We
just throw that guy out,
and
the next one gets up and starts speaking. I love that.
We were winging it based on it was sort of like, let's see what it is and play it. But this was. And I thought of it because watching him do it, 10, 15 times already. And they're trying to, the people around him, and, people say, don't say Lyndon LaRouche, but they're all part of this group, around that. They are trying to organize people to go to every member of Congress and stay in their face about it until they have to actually say, well, we're going to do it and we don't care what you want. Because none of them, they're still trying to hide from the people.
That's right. And don't you think that that's the most effective way forward right now that we have?
Yeah, get in their
because
face.
tweeting our congressmen's not enough. Calling them's not enough. Emailing them is not enough. You really do have to just get out there, bring your cell phone camera, and get in their face and disrupt their town hall. They won't answer your question. At least you've made them listen.
You're going to have a circus. You're not having it in my town. If you're going to have a circus, I'm going to do some lion taming.
Good.
That's basically what you got to do.
Good.
Anyway.
Over there, Rick, did you fall asleep on us?
No, I'm just
still there.
Still listening, analyzing. I just thought overall the speech was powerful. It was thoughtful. It was presidential, as I said before, and I think that's important because I could see him tonight, honestly, for the first time, as a president.
Yep, me too. Yep, as a president, I'd like to have.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes. But he
100%.
made me nervous because now I think he's a target for the swamp.
I have those dark thoughts myself, Rick. I won't lie.
He sort of drew a line in the sand, even though he's calling for peace. I think that, in a way, he may have just gone to war.
Well, Richard Nixon sent out the order around May 4th of 1970 and killed 4 people in Ohio. He had killed people at Jackson State, and there was another school also, and thought that they would intimidate the people that way. And what had happened instead was it exploded. And the people of this country, in the main, not everyone, but for sure, were much better off, relatively speaking, than they are now. They owned their homes, or their rent was manageable if they had one job. Only one parent had to work in about half the families, and if 2 parents worked in about 3/4 of the families, they could get by pretty, adequately. That's not the case anymore. And kids had a hope and even an expectation of being able to go to college if they could get the grades and or some help from the state, and that's not there either. And so they're playing with fire in a room that has a lot more gasoline in it than it did 50 or 60 years ago. And I don't know.
And there's more to that as well, because today I was speaking to people just when I was out in town, and of course I'm in Canada, but I'm sure it's the same down in the U.S. as well, all over the place. People have some very different views on the state of society right now because of social media. There's all this polarization. There's a very strange view of the way politics works. There's a lot of misunderstanding about how the systems work now. And as a result of that, I think we're getting some, and I hate to use the word radical, but I think it is almost radicalized. Radicalized. Sorry, what's that?
I don't know if it's 1968 level radical yet, but it's getting there.
Yeah, and people are just they're suffering. They've come through 3 years of lockdowns. There's, in some cases, actual mental health issues out there. You combine that with a misunderstanding of the system, combine that with distrust, lack of confidence, and erosion of confidence and trust in our government institutions. This is a very volatile situation. It was refreshing to hear the speech tonight because he's trying to heal the country, bring people back together, address a lot of those issues, but I'm not sure how this will actually resonate with the public. It's hard for me to know because we're not hearing this kind of talk from any other candidate at all. And so I'm not sure how it's going to play out. I think we need to give it time now to see how it plays out in the polls, how people respond to it, how the media responds to it, how the establishment pushes back against it. If he can win over it, this is kind of new ground that he's breaking, is I guess what I'm saying. And now we have to really see what the reaction to all of this is going to be, what the results of this will be, and then gauge it from there, because I'm not sure how it's going to resonate. I like it, but I'm not sure if some people will understand it. I think other people will really hate it because they'll see it as a threat. Certainly the establishment will, and they're going to push back. So where does he score points, lose points? Do they attack him and suppress him more? What's going to happen? I don't know.
And that's why he's running. And he says it in every single speech. The whole reason that he's taking this risk, risking his life, perhaps putting his family at risk. What if they become targets too?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
His wife, his kids, his grandchildren. I mean, everybody's at risk for him taking this step. And the reason he's doing it is he knows how angry people are. He's angry too. He knows that that bond of trust with our government, with our media, with all of our institutions is broken. He knows that the reason why he's identified the cause, it's fascism, it's eternal war.
Said it out loud.
And he said it out loud.
No.
See, I can see him resonating with the Bernie Sanders type of Democrats, right? So he's probably already got those now with that speech.
No, I don't think they'll ever vote again. They're so distrustful of elections in the Democratic Party. I don't.
And so that's kind of the issue, right? It's
That's a problem.
like even if he carries all of that support now, will the DNC system allow him to survive, or will they even give him a shot? It seems like it doesn't matter how much support he gets from the actual grassroots membership of the DNC. Will he get any support from the people who actually run the show?
There's a pincer move that he's facing, which is on the one hand, the institutional party, and on the other hand, the people who were screwed by the institutional party last time, not trusting him because you're another Bernie Sanders.
Right.
And so that's an awful lot to compete, for in a game where the rules are rigged and the referees on the rules are also stacked against you. But again, at the end of the day, the situation facing. I have a friend in Philadelphia, Professor Tony Montero at the Saturday Free School. I respect him as a political scientist highly. And he breaks this stuff down simply, when you reach a condition where the people will not be ruled under the old rules anymore, and the rulers cannot rule under the old rules anymore, you have, in essence, a pre-revolutionary crisis. And the problem facing the American people in the pre-revolutionary crisis is that we do not know what to do. Our level of political education, our level of political consciousness has been stunted over the last 50 years in terms of education, no more civics class even, in terms of communications, a media monopoly that Goebbels would be envious of, that, all of the jokes that they made about the Soviet Union, these are like toys compared to this massive machinery that exists here. And so the first task to actualize change of any kind, revolutionary or otherwise, is going to be to elevate the political consciousness of the people here. And so you have to start having the kind of conversations that Bobby Kennedy is having. You have to start bringing the kind of contempt for the institutions that the people have to the fore, like Trump is doing. And you have to make sure that one of them doesn't get loosed and the other one dominate, because you don't want, for example, an angry mob taking over the social, mores of a society and the controls of government. And you also don't want...
Isn't that why January 6th scared the hell out of him?
Yeah. For the same people that were scared, I was like, wow, the mystique has been broken.
Yeah.
They've stirred up crowds. What they did at the Maidan. This is like Malcolm X would say, chickens coming home to roost.
That's right. Absolutely.
Except at the Maidan, they killed police officers. And January 6th, only one person died. And that was an unarmed woman veteran named Ashley Babbitt. She got shot in the face by a guy who had basically a machine gun standing next to like 6 other guys with basically machine guns in armor and everything. They had no reason to do it, and they did it anyway.
It's an absolute outrage. And I couldn't believe how many Americans applauded her death when that cop shot her. They were like, yay, good, she's QAnon, she's MAGA, killer. Unbelievable. Unbelievable, that level of callousness to our fellow Americans when she was clearly not a threat.
This is a police killing. Why aren't you in the streets?
Why aren't you in the streets? Yeah.
Because you're wearing a red shirt, not a blue shirt. That's basically it.
Yeah. That's right. And, he said that war
and vice versa
is inevitable only if we make it inevitable.
Yeah. But Jack Kennedy said, these problems, he cited it. He recited it. That, these problems are made by men, so they can be solved by men.
Yeah. And it's true. No truer words were ever spoken. What I liked, I think my favorite part of the whole speech was when he basically name checked President Biden and called him out. And he said, I'm calling on you, sir, to start de escalating this war in Ukraine right now.
He
right
said something.
now.
He said at the press release I read today or yesterday, he called on Biden to do two things. One, apologize to the American people for lying to them about what we're doing in Ukraine.
Yep.
And two, apologize to the Ukrainian people for what's been done to them as a consequence of his lying and the pursuit of policies that are intended to enrich some people and have nothing to do with taking care of the rights of anyone.
That's right.
I was like, yeah, okay, I'm with that. Where do I sign?
Where do I sign?
Yeah.
If only Biden would sign that. And he called out the State Department, and he called out our diplomats, and he said, you need to de-escalate. It's time to negotiate right now, right now.
You know, people, I'm hearing from people, as you might imagine, some of the folks that I hang out with are a bit skeptical about things and even a little cynical, you know. And they consider me among them one of the more skeptical and cynical there. So, you know, hearing that, well, it's nice. These are great, nice words. Not quite tonight, but, you know, it's great. We're hearing this. He's another one. He's not going to do any of that. To me, I'm saying you're missing the point. The point is, as these people start saying these things out loud on television, it's because they have to. Okay, fine. It's of necessity, and they're trying to put the genie back in the bottle. The fact that they're doing it reifies what people know from their own personal experience and gives voice to it. And from there, change comes.
First, you have to start the conversation.
That's right.
And he's starting the conversation. You know, I mean, of course, the media is going to try to ignore everything he said tonight. I guess they're going to try to call it Russian talking points. Is everything that he just said Russian talking points? Did Vladimir Putin put words in his mouth?
Yes, the Russian, whatever talking points. I don't know how to say that. I know how to say, let's see, good day to Eliette. Where's the bathroom? Skolka Stoit. How much does that cost? Let's see, good day bar. Where's the bar? Etc.
Very important. Yeah.
Yes.
First question: where's the bathroom and where's the bar?
Yep. Yep. So, yeah. Anyway, yeah. Those are Russian talking points that I know of.
And you know, he's got an uphill battle here because he just gave this, you know, the most important speech so far of his candidacy. And you know, you go to the mainstream media sites, and what are you seeing? Here's ABC News. Oh, and there's Trump.
Yeah.
And then you go to NBC, and what do we have over there?
Nothing.
Well, if
you know,
let's check the New York Times.
Nothing.
That's always worth it.
Oh, there's Trump. There's more Trump. Oh, and there's Bernie Sanders.
Oh.
Oh, there he is.
The conspiracy candidate.
The old. That's
and
an
they
old
have to put
story from a couple of days ago.
Anti-vaccine in the headline every time they call him an anti-vaxxer.
So he's got a real uphill battle.
There's the most important thing.
Candidate.
The most important thing in the world that's going on today, according to the New York Times. Judge strikes down Arkansas law banning gender transition care for minors. That's the most important thing going on in the world right now.
That must be the most important thing in the world. It's what you're supposed to care about.
That's right.
How does that affect your daily life, though? What's that got to do with the price of gas, the price of food?
It displaces a conversation about the price of gas. That's what it does. It displaces a conversation about the things that matter. That's what it does. And it has people mad at each other because they feel A or a negative A or A and B or whatever about it, rather than like, can we talk about the price of gas and or the war and or these other things that matter?
No, we have to talk about my pronouns.
Yeah, pronouns. Yeah.
Or let's talk about drag queen story time or some other culture war crap. But what we need, and we all know it, if we're honest, is we need a president who will keep the peace. And Bobby said those exact words in his speech tonight. And what he was doing there is he was quoting his uncle, President Kennedy. He was once asked what he wanted printed on his gravestone. And he said, he kept the peace.
Yeah. My favorite line in history, political history, I've read it a lot. John Kennedy, in that same speech in June 10th, 1963 at American University, the final analysis, our most basic common link, is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's future, and we are all mortal. That last one especially, a statement of fact. You can argue some of the other stuff if you want to. I mean, I don't see how. But we are all mortal. And that means if you blow up the world, we all die. Yep. And so whatever we're talking about, is it something that you think everyone should die for? I don't know a question where the answer should be yes to that.
That reminds me of what he said. You can hear it on the tapes, the White House tapes of the Cuban Missile Crisis. At one point, General LeMay, Curtis LeMay, says to Kennedy, "Looks like you're in a pretty bad fix,
yeah,
sir,
that's right.
Mr. President."
What'd you say to me?
And what? He made him repeat it back.
Yep.
What'd you say?
Yep.
And then Kennedy said, "You know what? You're in a pretty bad fix right there with me."
That's right. You're in it with me, buddy. Yep. And that was the thing with them. They understood that that's what was at stake. Out of that whole room, there were, when you're with XCOM, maybe 15 people or whatever, Bobby Kennedy, Jack Kennedy, maybe McNamara, maybe one or two others understood it. They were all the civilians, by the way, that were in the room. And that is a point of distinction from the moment now, too. You had elected appointing officials. They were civilians, that they were not of the military or the intelligence agencies. And that is not the situation that we have now. Joe Biden is clearly placed in office. He wasn't elected, and he wasn't himself. It's not his. When he goes out, there's not throngs of people to greet him. He doesn't have a personal constituency, a national personal constituency. At best, he's a protest vote against Trump that's been drummed up by the media. But he's not even that. He doesn't command that. He's there because he represents the intelligence agencies that placed him there. And that means that we don't have civilian control of the government. And now go back into XCOM and look around the room, and who wants World War III and who doesn't? And that's where we are.
No, during those XCOM meetings, Kennedy was a lonely man in the room because he was the only one saying, no, we're not going to war with Cuba. We're not going to use nuclear weapons.
Give me another answer. Yeah.
And they didn't have one.
Yep.
So he came up with the blockade.
Yes, right. And I'm glad McNamara was there too. He's got his own coal to shovel, in the afterlife, but for a lot of the things he did. But one of the things is while he's atoning for that, we can thank him for our existence because he was a key part of that too. His post-mortem, you see The Fog of War, of course, the Errol Morris movie. And when he talks about, what happened during October 1962, and he talks about going to meet Castro, like in the early 1990s, I think, or something. And, it was the first time where they really got to sit down and say, what did you see back then? And what was going on around you? What was going on around me? They pulled out Khrushchev's memoirs and some of his papers and his son and a few other people that were witnesses to what was going on around him, and Fidel Castro also. And as it turns out, you had a situation where the Russians had placed at the field level of command these tactical nuclear weapons in Cuba that were there to defend against an invasion by the United States. And Castro had a veto power over it because they were going to use these weapons on Cuban soil. That he said, and McNamara asked him, if this happened or that happened, like if we started to invade or if we took out some of the air defenses as a preface to an invasion or whatever, would you have given out the order to do it? He said, not only would I have, I did.
Yep.
Those orders were countervailed. So that you had the episode with the submarine where they thought the war started because they had lost touch with contact with the outside world, and their orders were to launch. And all it would have taken is one match, and the generals here were waiting for it. They would have, if they had time, they would have set it up. They wanted that war so bad.
They did. They did. We were that close. People just don't really grasp in this day and age how close we came in 1962.
Yep.
I'm
George
afraid
C. Scott.
we're pretty damn close right now.
Yeah, well, I think we're close. Plus the people that operate the doomsday clock, whoever the hell they are, they're also convinced that we're a lot closer. And most sane people are. And by the way, what's an important critical fact, the Russians think so too, and so do the people in China.
Yes.
And they're the ones with their finger on it. And right now, I don't know how many people know this, but since last week, NATO, quote unquote, the United States has been conducting aerial war games around Russia. And as a matter of fact, if you ask around the country, I've heard from about a half a dozen people now that live anywhere there's a military base that they've been mobilized and sent abroad. So these war games is the largest aerial war game in the history of the universe. Okay, it's massive. And what the war game looks like to the Russians is they're invading. Oh, they stopped at the border. And this is the guy with his hand on the button saying, well, if they come in, I got to push the button quick because it only takes 12 minutes for a cruise missile to get from East Germany to Moscow in 1989. And now they're at the Polish border. And this is a 2023 missile, not a clunky old 1989 missile.
Scary, isn't it?
It's like playing Russian roulette with a full gun.
They are playing a game
with a full
nuclear
gun.
Weapons.
Yeah.
And they're, playing around with depleted uranium now too in Ukraine.
Just on the side, just as an aside,
and mosquito warfare. Have you guys heard about this?
Yeah, I did. Yes.
The mosquitoes.
Yeah. It's really what they used to call germ warfare. It's biowarfare.
It is biowarfare.
They take mosquitoes, they infect them with infectious diseases.
Malaria, I think, in this case.
Yeah, and others, and not just malaria.
West Nile.
They had bio labs where they were trying to, for specific genotypes, trying to find diseases that would be fatal and easily carried and transmitted, and all across Ukraine on Slavic genotypes, looking for Russian ones, and now they're delivering the weapon.
That's Nazi science.
Yeah,
they're trying to find a weapon that corresponds or will cause the most damage to a certain genetic DNA.
Yeah, that's
anybody Slavic.
That's basic Nazism.
That is Nazi science.
Yep.
Yeah, we've seen that before. And why isn't anybody raising hell about this? I posted about it on Twitter because a couple of days ago, the Russian Ministry of Defense had a press conference where they talked about these plans they discovered that the Ukrainians have to send drones full of these infected mosquitoes infected with malaria into the war zone to make the Russians too sick to fight. And I thought, don't you understand that mosquitoes don't understand national boundaries? They don't obey borders, and that you guys are going to get malaria too? The Ukrainians are going to get it too.
So you try looking for. I'm looking at Haaretz, for example, the Israeli newspaper. So they're like the sort of the closest they have to a lefty newspaper that's left in Israel and in Palestine, aka whatever. The banner headline there. Check this out. This is Amos Harrell. A full-scale West Bank operation would temporarily quell Palestinians and the Israeli far right. In other words, in order to solve the problem of the Palestinians and the right wing wanting to murder them, let's murder them now and preempt all of them.
See, this is the kind of thinking that our leaders actually engage in. They don't see anything wrong with it. That's what scares me, brother.
Yeah, me too.
They don't seem to see any issue with that, and I think it's insane.
I was thinking, if you end up with a Trump RFK showdown, social media is in a lot of trouble because
you can't talk about it.
You can't talk about it. They'll be censoring both sides. They'll have to ignore the entire election.
That's right.
Pretend it's not going on.
What election?
That's right.
There's no election.
it didn't work for the news channels. That's the thing. All of a sudden, nobody's going to be on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. And all of a sudden, the people that operate those platforms are going to be like, oh, that was a bad idea. And they're going to have to come up with something. Only this is a mass media. I mean, literally, it's a media of the masses. It's not a mass media. It's not a media for the masses or at the masses. It's a media of the masses. And so it's going to be harder to do that and sustain it. We'll find other ways.
Maybe they'll just, declare Biden the winner by acclamation.
Yeah,
what are you going to do about it?
I think that's happening.
Yeah.
Certainly in the Democratic primaries, he's already decided that he's the winner by acclamation.
That's right.
He's going to be the nominee, and that's what they're telling us. They're not asking us. They're not giving us any choice. They're not giving us any debates. They're just saying this is the way it's going to be. What are you going to do about it?
You saw the 2020 quote unquote Democratic convention. It was like a bad public access TV show.
It was.
It was horrible.
Because everybody was locked down, right? So it was all virtual.
It was, and here's Joe Biden. Here's like 12 people that they squeezed into his basement with, brick walls between them so nobody sneezed on each other or whatever. And there would be somebody produced something in their basement, tape after another, badly edited. Yeah, it was terrible. It's like, what? You gotta do better than that. Even after 9/11, when they had the big TV show where everybody was on all channels at one time, at least there was like somebody's directing this that knows what they're doing, because this is a really hard show. This was nothing like that. This is supposed to be a convention.
It was like a Zoom meeting.
Yeah,
but a really boring one.
Yeah, like the PTA or something.
Convention ever.
It's like, well, who's gonna make the brownies? You bring a soda? Okay, it was like that. It was, and yet somehow he got more votes than anyone in the history of the universe. Again, for as a presidential candidate. Yeah.
Most popular president ever.
He won the cemetery vote for sure.
We're on YouTube. We have to say that Joe Biden is the best president ever.
Oh yeah, there we go. Yes, he is, and
we got to make it
safe and effective. He's safe and effective. Props to Jimmy Dore for that.
Hell yes.
Yep, and everybody there. Yeah. All right, I guess I need to pack up and get out of here.
Yeah, it's like 9:15. So, any final thoughts there, Don? Where do you think this is going from here?
Well, he's definitely in the game. No matter what they try to do, he's definitely in the game. If I were advising the campaign, which I'm not, and if one thing I would say is don't take my advice, I would recommend two things. One, to send some probe out to Trump and try to arrange a debate for them. And if CNN and MSNBC and Fox won't carry it, do it on Twitter.
We will.
And in fact, run some kind of TV ad that's compliant with FEC regulations and split the money three ways between Twitter and each of the two candidates for their campaigns. And finally, the other thing I would have them do is do what Trump's doing. This is a success in this location. Take this show on the road. Go from place to place to place to place and let people see him in person and hear him talk and meet each other. And everybody will figure out what to do next.
That's great advice. I hope he listens. I hope somebody on the campaign is watching this broadcast and listening to you, but they're probably busy backstage.
I bet they are.
They'll catch the replay later.
Yeah, it's
That's
okay.
really good advice, Tom. I like
hopefully they'll figure that part out for themselves. Somebody smarter than me. No shortage of people like that. All right, guys.
It's such a pleasure having you. Thanks for helping us out.
Thank you both. Rick, thank you. Lori, thank you. Yep.
And we'll see you back here Thursday morning.
Yeah, Thursday morning. Yeah, he's speaking at 10:30. I'm going the night before, but I'm bringing somebody with me, and we're going to get there kind of late. I wanted to kind of scope the place out, so maybe 7 or 8 will hit the fairgrounds, and I want to try to see who else is there. I know some folks from the Libertarian Party will be there.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I'm going to this thing in Switzerland in July. I'm not an anarchist, okay, but Anarchy 2023, because it's going to be like a massive collection of political people, and this, I think PorcFest is going to be like that too. And so I think it's just interesting, and it's something that people should see. So I'm going to try to wander around that so we can discuss what's going on there, so you can show everybody,
Oh
this is
yeah, I would love some. Pork Fest. For those of you who might be Canadian, might not understand U.S. Politics, we have an annual festival for libertarians every year called Pork Fest. It's up there in New Hampshire.
It's with a C, by the way, not a K.
It's like we call it Woodstock for libertarians because it's like a 4 or 5 day camping out in the woods kind of thing, and there's live music, and it's all political. But they have a great lineup this year. Kennedy will be speaking on Thursday. Tulsi Gabbard will be speaking. I'm not exactly sure when, but if we can bring you Tulsi's speech, we will sure try. Dennis Kucinich is going to give a speech, and a lot of libertarians like Scott Horton, Angela McArdle, who's the national chair of the Libertarian Party, and some possible libertarian presidential candidates will be there speaking. So all you liberty lovers, tune in right here on Maverick News Thursday morning. I guess we're going to go live around 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, we'll see how what's going on the site, but so, I mean, if it's going to be like a libertarian Woodstock, I got to make sure not to eat the brown
Don't eat the
Pop-Tarts or
brown
something.
It's not specifically too good.
Yeah, right. I know. That's what All right, guys, I'm out.
We look
Take
forward
care.
to it. Thank you, Don.
Thank
Be
you.
safe.
Thank you. Take care,
Bye
you
now.
too. Bye-bye. Peace out.
That was great.
Peace out. Man, he did a great job.
Yeah, he's very knowledgeable, well-spoken, and just like RFK, thoughtful in what he says.
Yeah, Don's a good man and a damn good reporter. We're so lucky that he wants to have anything to do with the likes of us. Can you believe he's working with us, man? This is like getting a senior White House correspondent. Can't believe it.
Yeah.
I hope he is our senior White House correspondent in a Kennedy administration.
Well, I think he's got the forward momentum. He still needs much bigger crowds if he's going to go head to head with Trump. I just don't know about this DNC thing.
Me neither.
I'm thinking that he's probably already more popular within the party itself with the grassroots than Biden is, but it's just that machinery that he has to get through, right?
Yeah, I mean, who out there, seriously, is there anybody in this chat room right now, anybody within the sound of my voice, who just loves Joe Biden and you're planning to vote for Joe and you're going to tell all your friends and you're going to campaign hard and you're going to phone bank and fundraise? And is anybody out there excited about Joe Biden? If you are, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you, but I can't seem to find anybody. I'm looking everywhere for the Joe Biden fan club, and where's the Joe Biden fan club?
I don't know.
Bobby Kennedy's got a heck of a fan club. They might be small at this point. Our movement is small. It's growing, but they're very loyal, and they're going to stand by him all the way, as we say, all the way with RFK.
He does have the momentum with him, okay? And this Marianne Williamson, I don't even know, what is she doing? You just...
Good question.
Like, she's a third wheel, and I don't ever hear anything about her.
Yeah. Well, she's only polling like 5 to 8%, maybe as high as 10 in a couple of polls I've seen. She's just not resonating with most voters.
No.
I wouldn't even call her a fringe candidate, but she's just not hitting the mark. Marianne is for the continuation of funding Ukraine. She's an anti-Russia nut bar. She's got Putin derangement syndrome. She wants to keep this war going. She wants regime change in Russia. So she's definitely not a peace candidate. And for that reason alone, I can't stand with her. I like Dr. Cornel West, always have. I have a lot of respect for Dr. West. And if my guy, Bobby Kennedy, was not in the race, I'd probably be supporting Dr. Cornel West. And I'm glad that the Green Party hopefully will nominate a really strong candidate like Dr. West this year. I'm happy for the Greens because, I'd love to convert them into Kennedy voters. You guys know I'm a volunteer recruiter for the campaign. I've been trying to coax Bobby into this race for 16 years. Okay, so nobody wants this guy to be president more than I do. It's a personal thing for me, and I believe in his candidacy that much that I'm willing to say so openly as a journalist, right? And put my credibility on the line. And I can't be objective on this story, but I would love to convert all of you into Kennedy voters. I'd love to convince you, if I could, to vote for this man. But I'm also an independent voter. I've been a libertarian third-party voter for 27 years, and I left the Democratic Party 30 years ago. It's going to be very hard for me to change my voter registration and vote for a Democrat. I gotta hold my nose and just vote. Ugh. It's hard. It's really, really hard. And I'm a Kennedy Democrat from way back, all my life. Kennedy Democrat. I just felt like the Democratic Party had left all of our ideals behind when they became a corporatist party and a war party and a censorship party. So I don't care which party he runs with. If he wants to switch and run Republican, cool. I'll vote for him. I vote for the person, not the party. If he wants to change to the Libertarian Party, we would love to have him. There are many libertarians that have been talking to me lately, letting me know to pass the word along to Kennedy that, hey, if you get tired of the Democrats and you want to run third party, we just might nominate you. We'd be real happy to have you as our candidate. Libertarians really love Bobby, and I think that's why he's chosen to speak at Pork Fest this weekend. And there's a big scandal, kerfuffle about that. I think I was telling you about it the other day, Rick. The New Hampshire Democratic Party sent Bobby a letter this week saying, hey, we hear you're speaking at this libertarian thing. These people are extremists. They're dangerous. They like guns. They like their Second Amendment. They actually bring guns to the camp. Bobby, you can't speak there. They did. They tried to tell him to cancel his appearance at Pork Fest. You know what Bobby said?
No.
Something along the lines of, go fuck yourself. I'm going to Pork Fest. So he's going to be there. And he doesn't give a shit. He's doing it. Good for him. Libertarians like that sort of thing.
So that's on Thursday morning.
Thursday morning, I think Don said 10:30. So we'll be doing a special broadcast, morning show. I hope you'll join us, folks.
Sure.
Please do subscribe to the Maverick News Channel. If you haven't done so already, click that like button. Share this video with your friends and family. Help us get the message out about Robert F. Kennedy's campaign. Unfortunately, my good friend Rick Walker is not an American citizen. And even if he really wanted to vote for Kennedy, he could not. He can't donate. He can't work for the campaign. He can't help in any other way being a foreigner, but I can. And I've known Bobby a long time. My heart's in this. And if you would like to connect with me, if you'd like to volunteer, we got work for you to do at the Kennedy 24 campaign. Just go to kennedy24.com/Lori Spencer, and I will hook you up. So thank you for watching. Thank you for those of you who support Kennedy. And for those of you who don't or haven't made up your mind yet, thank you for watching anyway and listening to what he had to say. Appreciate you.
Okay. And thank you all. I'll be back tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on the Maverick News Channel. Catch you on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.